What's up, everybody? It's GameFace episode 392 with Luna on SIFTD Games at SIFTD.net. Sure you could hear her on the microphones before we started the show. Hope you guys are doing great. It is actually an awesome day in LA today. I'm rocking the shorts. I haven't worn shorts in a really long time. The weather here is perfect while the rest of the world is burning, Matt. Mm-hmm. It's like... This is when it's worth all the money that we spend to live here. Because we're the only people, it seems like, in the entire world that are comfortable right now. Yeah. It just feels like the world is on fire. It's really crazy.
The Bay Area is still pretty... The heat dome missed the urban areas of California.
Yeah. I mean, all of California is... I mean, it's 82 here today, which is, to other people, that's like, great. That's hot for here.
Well, in the UK, apparently, it's a... emergency situation because they don't have AC.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Bay Area where the weather's so moderate that a lot of even nice places a lot of times don't have AC.
Yeah, we didn't have AC. I didn't have AC growing up.
Me either. I mean, I never had it anywhere I lived in the Bay Area.
I didn't have AC until I got to LA.
Yeah.
And then actually it was broken in the apartment I moved into for the first year.
So really?
I just sat around being very warm.
Really? Cause I mean, I turn on AC. I mean, I'll go months without turning it on. And then it gets like really hot in like late August. Like you get the Indian summer stuff here. And I'll turn it on. I'll run it for like a month. But for the most part, even here, you don't have to run it too much.
Well, it's on right now. Like
yeah.
It hasn't. Like this is the first time it's been on in the last couple weeks. It's been on for the first time since like October.
You actually have an upstairs.
Yes.
A lot of people here don't. I don't.
I've turned it on a few times the last few shows because it gets warm up here.
Yeah. Well, there's gear in here too that makes it warmer.
Yesterday I was downstairs all day and I checked the temperature upstairs was 85.
No.
Which is a bit much.
It's not a big deal until you go to bed if you sleep upstairs.
Cats like it warm.
So really? Interesting.
All cats love it. Cats prefer like a 90-degree temperature if you give it to them.
Wow.
In fact, the AC's on now, I bet if you go in the bedroom and look, Rampage is under the covers because she's cold.
Wow. Well, we hope you guys are staying cool. We know we have a lot of viewers who are in Europe, and we feel for you guys, man. Dealing with heat when you have no AC sucks. Mm-hmm. It really does suck. So hopefully everyone's hanging in there. Maybe you're sitting inside with the air conditioning, enjoying some video games like you should be. But anyway, here we are for GameFace episode 392. We got a pretty good show for you guys. Next week's going to be awesome. But we do have at least one big game for you guys today. That's obviously Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. Matt's been chopping that tree down to size, and we'll talk about that. I think our housekeeping today is really good. Lots of big stories in there as well. So we definitely have a good show. This is GameFace, the flagship show of SIFTD Games at SIFTD.net. If you like the show, please head to patreon.com/SIFTD and give us a pledge. For just $4 a month, you get all our content early. You get this show 4 days early. You get Pack Your Factor a week early. You get all our content at least 3 days early. Again, just for $4, we'd appreciate it very much. And if you don't have any money, if you're watching on YouTube, go down below and you can figure out how to help us if you have Amazon Prime to give us a couple bucks for free every month just because you subscribe to Amazon Prime. And Matt, I am really reaching the point where I've kind of decided maybe I'm going to cancel my Amazon Prime subscription. I think I mentioned it in last week's show. It's like, I don't know what I'm paying for anymore. Now that I'm watching ads to watch videos on Amazon Prime, it's kind of goofy the way I have it set up. But if you are an Amazon Prime member, make the most out of that membership, because the one thing I realized, Matt, is that I don't take advantage of a lot of this little stuff in Amazon Prime. Like if you shop at like Whole Foods, which is way overpriced and expensive, but if you do, you can get huge discounts if you're an Amazon Prime member. There's all these weird little perks about it that I think a lot of people don't know, and one of them is Twitch Prime. So go down below. People who follow us already know how to do it. If you're in that boat, go re-up right now. If you're trying to figure it out and you're watching on YouTube, the instructions are down below. It's very simple, and it's very quick. We appreciate it very much.
Unless you're on iOS, in which case, no.
Well, I think actually somebody told me that they updated the app now, and you can subscribe on...
I would be very surprised by that because that means Apple gets a cut.
Right, I would be surprised by that too. So that's what I remember someone told me that. I don't know if that's the facts. I haven't checked it myself.
Yeah, as far as I know, if you have an iPhone, you have to use an actual web browser to do it.
Which is kind of a pain in the butt because a lot of people don't have PCs anymore. Yeah. Jump on your laptop and do it, though, if you get a minute. Let's see what else. It's been kind of a slow week in games. There's a couple interesting cultural stories we're going to talk about in housekeeping, but as far as game releases are concerned, it's been kind of slow. But it's the way it's worked out, the last 2 months, the whole month has been kind of mellow, and then the last week, you get this deluge of games, and that has happened again in June. So just like last month, the last episode of the month is going to be a doozy, and that will be next Tuesday right here at twitch.tv/SiftedGames. Let's check in with you guys in the chat and see how you guys are doing. Hope you guys are having a good week. Summer just kicked off. Hope you guys have some exciting stuff that you're planning for your summer vacations, or even if you're going to do a staycation, you got some good games lined up. Silk Snake says, no Elden Ring flower pot, minus 5-star stream. Yeah, can't do that every week, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't leave it here. The cats can get at the plant.
Oh, really? Will they eat plants?
I don't know, but I'd rather not find out.
It will make them sick a lot of times if they eat plants. WH Blaze, thank you for Twitch Prime. David 5807, thank you for Twitch Prime. We got any others in here? I don't think so. The Cult, yes, matter of fact, I was playing The Cult. Also played a little bit of Joy Division before the show today, and I am honoring them with the shirt for today's episode. Faradol says, I heard Luna. Yep. That's for sure. Janderman1978, thank you for subscribing at Tier 1. Thank you for doing that for 22 months and your 19-month streak, man. Thank you very, very much. All right, Eric Cartman says, I run the AC 9 months out of the year. Man, you must live in like Arizona or something, or New Mexico, or maybe Texas.
Florida.
Yeah, Florida. Yeah, it's been, dude, in those states, it has just been brutal, the heat. Like, even places where it normally only gets to like 85, it's been like 100 or whatever. Noxitois, thank you for gifting all these Tier 1 subs. Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. Very generous of you. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure our viewers do too. Big Smoke 82 says, I canceled my Amazon Prime a year ago. However, I got 6 months free and a new TV. I'll sub for the next 6 months. Fair enough. Do that too. Stolte69, thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime. What else we got here? Not just Final Fantasy XIV X-Pack launch for me this Friday. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Luigi's Mansion, and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which is actually a remake of Dark Moon, comes out on Friday, and I'm really excited for that as well.
I was interested, and then I saw how much it costs.
How much is it?
Full price.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by that, honestly. I like making Shane say my name. I didn't get it right the first, like, 3 times or whatever. It took me a couple times to get it. But I think I got it handled now. I think I'm saying it right.
Nixitois.
Nixitois.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll get it right next time. I'll keep trying. So anyway, let's get on with housekeeping. We do have a pretty big episode for today. And if we tarry too long, we're going to end up doing another 3-hour and 30-minute episode. And I want to try to avoid that if we can. Oh, one thing I should mention, too, before we get going.
How fast did it render?
It did not render any faster. It's so weird. So, like, I render shorter videos, and they're way faster. But GameFace, the 3 hours, it was the same time. It still took, like, 6 hours to render it. I don't know. I need to look at the settings. So, yeah, that didn't work out like I had hoped. I was like, man, maybe we could put up the episode tonight when we were recording last week's episode, but that ended up not being the case. It took just as long. It seems like if you render with a GPU, shorter videos are faster, but longer ones aren't. I started, like, digging into it, and they also say that rendering with a GPU, you don't get as good results. That CPU rendering is more elaborate, and it analyzes each frame more. So basically, people said, like, if you have a good CPU, just render with your CPU. So we'll see. I'm going to try it with the CPU because I have an awesome new CPU, and we'll see if it's faster than it used to be. Unfortunately, though, it looks like we're not going to be able to deliver GameFace to you guys the same night as the day that we record. I'm going to keep trying, though, I promise you. Silk Snake says, Shane, can you not just upload this video from Twitch straight to YouTube? No, you can't. The video quality here, so the archive of the stream video here on Twitch is the same bit rate as the stream. And obviously, we can't stream full res video because it'll choke the pipes and it'll stutter and you can't do it. So it's like the bit rate of the Twitch video is maybe 1/20th of the bit rate that we usually start from to render. And as you know, on YouTube, because they also crunch video down, the better source file you start with, the better the final output is on YouTube. So we don't go crazy. Like, we don't start with a crazy bitrate video, but it's pretty high. Like, we want it to look pretty good. And I think it does. Like, I think if you watch our show on YouTube, generally, the show looks pretty dang good. And the footage is looking really good. I finally got that stuff fine-tuned as well, as far as creating video B-roll that runs through our TriCaster that's ideal for the TriCaster and therefore gets spit out in as clean a form as possible. So I think our show's looking pretty good on YouTube. That's just me. Obviously, you guys have a right to your own opinion on that. But just so you know, I work hard on that stuff. I'm constantly thinking about that stuff. I don't know if anybody else cares about it. We don't get a lot of comments on like, wow, that B-roll looked great. But I do care about it. So just know that I'm always working on delivering the best possible show to you guys at all times. All right, let's kick something off with some good news, Matt, on this early summer episode of GameFace. Something that I think probably made both of us happy this week. There's a couple big stories tied in here. First of all, there is Beyond Good and Evil 20th anniversary. And that was just basically shadow dropped. Out of nowhere. Like we got
a couple days notice. Really.
Yeah, it leaked like a day or 2 days before, I think. And then next thing you know, last night at midnight, it actually launched. There is a graphics comparison between this and the HD version live on SIFTD right now that we curated from a YouTube channel called Game Explain. They very quickly turned around a comparison video for it. It is kind of hard to tell the difference between the HD version and the 20th anniversary version, but still, I think
it's pretty clear this is running at a native resolution and not being upscaled though. Like I think it's more noticeable on console because the old console versions are really
they're a little long in the tooth.
I mean, look at the quality of the textures on page.
Yeah.
I mean the fact that his ear looks like an actual animal and not like
a folded over like origami basically. Yeah.
And it's like the pearl's translucent there, and like there's a bunch of little extra additions that are clear, because having just played it a few years ago on Xbox in backwards compatibility, this looks a lot better.
Yeah.
And it runs better in terms of like PC. Like you could get it to work, but it just. Although I heard that on PC this thing actually crashes a lot, or was crashing when people first installed it. I got it on Xbox and PC. I just haven't played it on PC yet.
Did you get a chance to play it all on Xbox?
Yeah, played for a couple hours. I played through the...
So you actually have this information firsthand from experience in the game.
Yeah, I played this up through up to that snake boss thing.
Okay. Which I think everybody remembers from that game.
Yeah.
Some people maybe didn't make it much further than that.
And it's got extra stuff in it, too. Like, they've added some stuff that theoretically hooks into the events of Beyond Good and Evil 2.
Yep. Beyond Good and Evil 2 is not dead.
I haven't seen yet. But supposedly they've added connective tissue.
Yeah, Ubisoft also shared that the game is in development still. It also admitted, yes, the studio has had issues. There's been turnover with the people who are working on it, but it is absolutely still coming. It is still being worked on. I may not see it before I die, but it does sound as if it is still in active development. Ubisoft is still trying to finish the game. I was kind of surprised by that. I really thought this was going to be one of those games that just disappeared into obscurity forever.
I have had friends at Ubisoft who believed that.
Yeah.
I had friends who worked on it that believed on it. There's like this was never a serious attempt at anything. I mean, I love the world that this the universe this takes place in, the original, and what they're showing in this trailer. Like I know there's people that are upset that that guy was a dashboard decoration in Far Cry 6. They tried.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's people that are like annoyed that like this wasn't it's a prequel or whatever, and that's not continuing the story from the original. I just anything more with this world, I'll take it.
Yeah, me too. I love the universe.
Weird and it's so French manga inspired comic stuff. It's very Mobius in a lot of ways. It's exactly the kind of universe that appeals to me, that whole like everything's just incredibly fucking weird, but nobody really comments on it. It's
like that's like the way it is.
There's just goat children in the orphanage. We're not gonna fucking talk about it. What? You're the weird one if you think it's weird. There's goat children in the.
Yeah. It is such a huge shift in tone as well for this versus the first game. But we never really saw the first game in a fidelity like this either. So it's kind of hard to tell.
And like there's it's a huge universe. They do imply there's many I don't really see much more than Hillis in the first game. So this is a Star Wars level thing. It's like Coruscant's not going to look like Tatooine.
Right. The funny thing is, it's taking so long to get this game out that when it comes out, it could actually look like this.
Yeah.
Like this was a target render at one point.
This isn't super unreasonable to expect out of the Unreal
Not
Engine
anymore. It's really not. It's hilarious. Maybe that's what they're doing, Matt. They're just waiting until technology is caught up.
Some of these games really feel like they fell into that trap. I think that's what happened to Star Citizen.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, actually, I have a question from Vincent in the chat. He asks, what comes first, Beyond Good and Evil 2 or Squadron 42? And that's Star Citizen's single-player campaign.
That's a tough one. I mean, I'm going to guess this.
I think you're right. I really think so.
Because not releasing this doesn't continue earning Ubisoft tons of money for no good reason. So
I keep wondering if they won't finish Star Citizen, because if they do, then it's like they lose their jobs and their jobs end.
Yeah. Once you put it out and say this is it,
what do you do then?
Like, are people still gonna
keep donating money?
And can you still do that? Because then people are just gonna see it as pay to win.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, it's an anomaly.
Like, finishing that game is basically shutting down your funding.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They are not incentivized to finish the game.
Now, Squadron 42 doesn't fall into that category because it's separate from Star Citizen.
Yeah.
But I do believe that several of the actors in that will probably have died by the time they put that out. I mean, they mocapped that 10 years ago.
The credits for it, all of it's going to be posthumous.
Yeah, it's just going to be all tributes.
Yeah. Yep. But listen, if you guys have not played Beyond Good and Evil 2, and I realize most people are around Matt and I's age who watch GameFace and are on our stream right now, but a lot of people aren't. And if you have not played this game, Matt and I both highly recommend it. We have been since we launched GameFace. Every time we talk about this game, we tell you guys that you should play it if you haven't. It is, even to this day, a very unique video
it's still
game.
Very good. It's got a cozy game element to it.
Yeah, it does a little bit. It's got photography.
And sort of poking around things and explorations there. The combat's there. It's got the sneaking stuff, which is not as good.
Yeah.
Big open world to drive around in the hovercraft, and the characters are great. And honestly, $20 for this is solid.
Yeah, that's a great deal.
That's a better price than you're gonna get for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And again, right now things are slow. It's the summertime. It's a good time to maybe jump on a game like this that Matt and I have been recommending for a long time.
It's also a good summer game.
You're right. Yep, it is a good game to play when you're kind of huddled inside in the air conditioning and kind of chilling out, literally. So it's available for pretty much everything, even last gen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it even came out for PS4 and Xbox One.
I think so, yeah.
What about Switch?
It's on Switch.
Is it on Switch? I'd like to see how that looks.
I imagine fine.
Yeah, it should.
There's nothing super crazy happening here.
Yeah. I mean, it's an open world game that's almost 20 years old.
Yeah. If the original Xbox could run it.
Yeah, it should be able to handle it. Switch should be able to. So anyway, there you go. That's Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition. Highly recommended by both Matt and I. Next up, a little bit of a cultural story that just kind of popped up yesterday, but it's been really ongoing. If you spend any amount of time on Twitch, and a lot of you guys are on it right now watching our show, thank you very much for showing up. We appreciate it. You've probably heard of a streamer called Dr. Disrespect. He is a guy who wears a black wig and a fake mustache, and he looks like he would be maybe like an action star from a 70s TV show. And I can run some B-roll so you can get the... I mean, you've probably seen him before. He's a bit of a streaming celebrity, one of the few that exist. He has been controversial pretty much his entire career. At E3 2019, he went into the women's bathroom and started filming. E3 threw him out. There's a litany of issues with this guy throughout his entire career. And the final breaking point appears to have finally occurred because he got suspended by Twitch and nobody knew why. And he was kind of... I wouldn't say he was making excuses, but he was saying it wasn't a big deal and blah, blah, blah. Well, as it turns out, some people who used to work at Twitch who no longer work there anymore, who were a part of that whole process, have now come out and said, oh, no. This is why he got tossed off our platform. And it's because he was basically grooming, allegedly, I need to make sure I say that, he was allegedly grooming underage people through the Whispers functionality on Twitch. And in one of those instances, he tried to set up an in-person meeting with a minor at TwitchCon. And that is why he was suspended from the platform. And
it sounds like largely because he was trying to use the Twitch-sponsored event as part of the plan rather than what he actually allegedly did. Twitch doesn't suspend unless they really have to, it seems like.
He's also very fortunate that this news was not made public back when it happened, because he was allowed to continue making money under the Dr. Disrespect moniker for the last 5 years. If Twitch had shared why he was booted off the platform, I don't know. At this point, it feels like people will support the worst possible people anyway, but I do feel like maybe his support could have been muted in some way at least. So it's a little... I mean, he's obviously freaking out now about it, saying, oh, this isn't true, this isn't accurate, blah, 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 but...
Yeah, the denials were really weirdly half-hearted. And it was like, well, I can't say It was like people saying, oh, he can't directly say he didn't do it because of NDAs. I'm like, I don't think that's how NDAs work.
No, that's not how an NDA works at all. Yeah. And the funny part is, this B-roll, if you watch it, you can see fans come up to him, he hates them. He doesn't want to talk to anybody.
Well, I don't know him. I've never met him.
Me either.
But like, to me, it seems like a pro wrestling thing where he's intentionally the heel.
He's the heel.
He's an asshole to everybody, including the fans, and that's kind of what is expected.
Yeah.
Like Stone Cold was back in the day, in certain time before he became so popular.
Did the heel turn?
They made him a baby face. Yeah, so I imagine the fans are kind of in on the joke when he's flipping them off as he walks past them. Like, that's what they want out of him. And it also kind of works because he's so tall. Like, he does have a larger than life.
He towers over them, yeah.
So every time I've seen him in any of these clips or any of these the E3 stuff and all, it always felt like a WWE thing. Yeah. It always felt like
fake.
It was wrestling.
Yeah. And I mean, it very well could be.
And look, personas are everybody plays a character on stream.
And I'll be honest with you, I don't really have a problem with his character. Like, if he wants to be this guy, that's totally fine.
If that's what works, that's what works. Like,
it's
that's fine.
It's the personal stuff. It's when you're DMing.
It's like, dude, you won the fucking lottery.
Yeah.
You won the Twitch streamer lottery, and you just couldn't be a decent person.
Couldn't do it. Yeah, allegedly. Yeah, have to keep saying that. So, a lot of these people that, there's a lot of kids that worship.
Because I'll tell you, Stone Cold was a giant asshole on camera, and so was Triple H. But those guys are the nicest people you will ever meet.
You're right. I forgot about that. Most wrestlers actually are that way.
Most wrestlers are super smart,
down to
earth, be their own business managers.
Yeah,
and really smart.
Yeah,
and really smart, really nice. Like, because they have nothing to prove to anybody.
Yeah. So I don't care what he does when he's on his stream, and his character that he plays and his shtick, totally fine. It's when you start DMing, allegedly, with underage minors and trying to get them to meet you. What was his excuse for that? He said that he was just wanted to be friends or something.
Don't know. I didn't read the. I saw that it was something like today he finally admitted he did talk to her, but he was never going to actually do anything about it.
Yeah.
Which is like, sure, dude.
Well, then the final result of all this is that he was booted from the game development studio that he co-founded. Mm-hmm.
That's like, I know people are going, it's like evidence. Like, well, a lot of this we'll probably never know publicly because it's just, nobody needs to prove anything to us.
Yeah.
We're not the court. But, like, also, the company you co-founded, like...
Midnight Society.
And you are developing a crypto game with, so ethics are not super in line here.
Yeah.
We don't. They presume your innocence by their own statement and then look into this and, like, 2 or 3 days later are just, like, publicly like, yeah, we're going to have to cut ties with this dude. Mm-hmm. And it's just like... I don't need a whole lot more smoke to believe there's fire there, personally.
Yeah. My guess also is that they were looking for...
Because you didn't need to announce that publicly.
Right.
Like, you could just quietly...
Just said, you know what, let's separate. And,
you didn't need to do that, like, right out there on social media.
Well,
like
you do kind of, though.
If you discovered something horrible in there or whatever they found out, they've clearly felt the need to make it clear publicly that they no longer had it. And it's like, to me... that says something because dealing with the backlash from his fans is not going to be a simple matter for that company. Mm-hmm. And so they decided it was better to deal with that than to continue to associate with him. And that just makes me wonder what the hell they learned.
Yeah, it does make me nervous, too. I don't even have kids, but I have lots of nieces and nephews. And they all are obsessed with him, but all of them have somebody like him that they are obsessed with, either on Twitch or on YouTube. And you try to talk to them, and you can just see that they are completely delusional about that person. Like, for example, one of my nephews was following this guy. I don't remember what his name was. I had never seen him before, but he was obsessed with him. And I watched his videos. He didn't have, like, that many views or that many followers, but it was the person that my nephew connected with, and he loved him. Like,
that was the parasocial connection.
For Christmas, he got, like, his merch, and he was, like, wearing it over to open his gifts at my mom's house. Like, he was obsessed with this guy. And I'm like, well, show me his video or something. I want to check him out. He shows me his video. The guy is wearing, like, fake glasses, and he's just total fake. And I'm just like, okay. And he's like, well, what do you think of it? I'm like, well, he's wearing fake glasses. And he's like, what are you talking about? Yeah. I'm like, there aren't any lenses in those glasses. He's like, oh, yeah, there are. And I'm like, no, there aren't. Look at it. He's like, he's put his face, like, right. You're crazy. What are you talking about? I'm like, do you see any glare on the lenses or anything? He's like, I don't, but it's just the lighting. I'm like, you could just see, like, how these kids are completely delusional over these people. And that's what's scary to me. It's not, like, Paul Rubens didn't dress like Pee Wee Herman on a daily basis either. It's just like a character's a character. Mm-hmm. But, like, the nature of social media and the kind of constant interaction that it offers becomes
it's a different thing. Like, I didn't believe I knew Pee Wee Herman.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Whereas these people, I mean, you're chatting, sometimes they might directly respond to something
and
you
say your name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's a different thing. Mm-hmm. So it's, and kids are probably, their brains aren't developed. Like, it doesn't.
This kid's 8.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. And it's
it was an eye opener though.
And honestly,
I
think it's a phenomenon that most parents are just not prepared for because they don't understand that whole phenomena that's sort of that any of that's going on.
Yeah.
Oh,
they had no clue. I mean, they're just, you want his merch? Cool, we'll buy his merch.
Oh, he likes a TV person. It's like it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. Yeah, it's different. So just something to keep in mind if you have your own kids or you have nieces and nephews out there. It's a different world from when we grew up. There's no doubt about it. There's a closer connection with the person on the other side of the screen now than there used to be. Like, these people used to be anonymous.
And you don't know how, I think probably most of, streamers and YouTubers and all that, most of those people keep a solid distance from, their fans in that regard because they know, they don't want that in their life. That's overwhelming for anybody. But, you never know which one is going to realize that they can take advantage of it.
Yeah, and also, don't get us wrong, like, there are some good people out there doing this. They're not all predators, like, allegedly. There are some good people doing this as well. We're not saying, like, everybody who's on YouTube, all the streamers are bad people.
This is just people in positions of power over other people.
And in general.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, and I also don't think it's necessarily, there's a higher percentage of people doing it in this space either.
I don't think it's specific to streamers. Yeah. No. I think it's specific to, honestly,
poorly raised people,
insecure men who suddenly realize they have power and they didn't before. Like they say, like power. As Abraham Lincoln. If you want to test a man's character, give him power.
Yep.
Everyone can handle adversity.
Yeah.
And I think you see that over and over and over again.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't even know. Is he even really relevant anymore? Dr. Disrespect doesn't seem like I see him around that much anymore.
No, I don't know.
He's on YouTube, I guess.
He was sort of a legacy. Streamer in a way.
His videos still do pretty big views.
He did big views, and Turtle Beach had him as a creator sponsor until yesterday.
Yeah.
He was still around. He was still doing the thing. He still had a big audience.
Yeah.
So he just switched to YouTube.
Will it affect him at all?
He seemed to kind of give up yesterday.
Seemed like he quit yesterday.
I would imagine
he's taking an extended hiatus or something.
I wouldn't imagine he'll be gone forever, but I
don't either.
I don't know what at the very one thing or the YouTube's not going to do anything about it. YouTube doesn't care. He can come back whenever he wants. So I would imagine even if YouTube did something back, he can just move over to Kick.
Well, there's also convenient deniability among the fans.
Right.
Because you brought it up earlier. They're just going to keep saying, where's the proof? Where's the proof?
Even show them the proof, and they'll be like, well, that could be
I don't believe that. Again, this is kind of a recent phenomenon with
someone
the way
could have hacked his phone and texted someone
and
pretended to be. It's like there's any number of weird conspiracy theories to help him
absolve yourself from guilt.
That
what
he's
it really
not
comes
even
down
trying to do.
Right.
He's not doing that. It's the audience. It's
the
fans are kind of like coming up with these outlandish ideas of how nothing could ever have happened.
Because he's an adult, Matt, and he knows it is idiotic.
Right.
These are all kids who are like, I want to feel okay liking Dr. Disrespect.
But then you see some all these people are not kids.
Yeah, that's the sad part.
They're 20s and 30s.
That's the sad part. Holy moly. So anyway, that's just the latest cultural drama in the games industry. But he is taking an extended hiatus. It sounds like he's going to go away for a while. Again, I think a lot of his fans will find excuses for him to come back, and he'll be like, my fans still love me, so I'm coming back. And he'll be right back, and it'll be like nothing ever happened. Because again, I don't think those people are ever going to get the evidence that they require to believe this story. So the wheel keeps on turning. Next up. We've been talking on the show lately about how console exclusives are kind of turning into not a thing anymore. Square Enix has been burned by making Final Fantasy exclusive to PlayStation with Final Fantasy 16 and then Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. And it seems like most third-party publishers are like, we're not doing that anymore. Everything we release is going to come out on every platform that's possible. We need to maximize our sales. That's the way to go about it. Well, seems like things went in reverse a little bit this week. We found out, first of all, that Black Myth Wukong had been delayed for Xbox. And nobody could understand why. They're like, wait a minute, like why all of a sudden are you announcing when it's like a few months out? Basically, they announced the release date for this game. I think it's August 30th. And in that release date, like the Xbox version suddenly wasn't a part of the end slate of the trailer. And people were like, wait a minute, like where'd the Xbox version go? Well, then the developer had to clarify, it's still coming to Xbox. And the developer said something like, basically, insinuating that they were having problems developing the Xbox version because of the hardware or the libraries that were provided to them by Xbox or whatever. They made something.
I would buy, outside of this story, I would have bought that, like, you're having trouble getting this to work on the Series S.
Yeah, I could, right. And that's, I mean, because that's been true before.
Yeah.
Honestly. However, as it turns out, that was not the case at all. The game has been, quote unquote, delayed on Xbox because PlayStation has money had at the studio and it is now a paid exclusive for PlayStation, which is totally fine.
Good old-fashioned Sony action.
Old man money hatting, yeah. And that's fine. Like, that's part of the business.
Part of the deal. Like, if you think you're going to make more money from what Sony pays you for exclusivity than you would by selling it on the other platforms, that makes sense.
Right. The problem is the studio messaging. Trying to use subterfuge to say, oh, we had problems working on Xbox, instead of just saying, like, look.
I mean, that might be.
It both could be true, I guess.
Like, you know, maybe that may be one reason they decided to take the deal was like, oh, it gives us more time to figure this bullshit out.
That's possible, yeah. It does seem a little.
Clearly, there's more to the story than just like, oh, we have trouble with this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not good. I mean, it's so funny, though, that anybody would do that anymore. It's like, you know you're going to get caught. Yeah. You know someone's going to squeal. Like,
everything comes out eventually now. There's no hiding anything. The dumbest thing you can do is lie in 2024 because the information
or even just half true. Like,
right.
Because now what does everybody think?
Right. Yeah.
You know? If you just said this, maybe it wasn't maybe he wasn't able to say it. Maybe it's like
that's possible.
Maybe that's
part of the deal that was signed.
We don't know.
Yeah.
But in the end, like the answer should have just been like, you know, Xbox is still coming.
It's a paid exclusive. Yeah. Xbox version is still coming.
Is still coming.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't need to elaborate.
Yeah. Sometimes saying too much is too much. That's exactly what happened in this case. So it is still coming to Xbox. They haven't said when. I guess that all depends on how big of an exclusivity period was negotiated with PlayStation for the game. So it could be 6 months, it could be a year, we don't know, but it is still coming to Xbox eventually, and it is coming to PC as well. But this game is another one of those games that's just kind of blending in for me. All these games that are coming from Asia right now, a lot of them look and play the same. They're almost all of them are hack and slash action RPGs.
Got a lot of Souls element. You know, there's like that dark fantasy look.
Yeah,
like this is basically like George R.R. Martin's, you know, Tale of the Monkey King. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks nice, but like I don't know if I've played some. I've just played another one of these. I played the top one of these just this week, and even that didn't like set my world on fire. Really. It was like, you got to really make sure you do that in the right order,
or otherwise. That's funny.
Very short game. Otherwise.
The other thing too is that these games don't really sell all that well.
No, like, they have kind of a ceiling, and other than Elden Ring. Elden Ring obviously broke a lot of barriers there, but like
I'm speaking more specifically of like the Asian hack and slash game, like Stellar Blade. We just found out today that it just finally sold 1 million. So that game did not end up doing, I think, as well as a lot of people thought it was going to do.
Yeah, so much. Well, I mean, I don't know if I say a lot of people, some loud
certain
people.
amount, the vocal minority maybe. Yeah. As it turned out, they were the vocal minority because nobody bought the game. I mean, I know a lot of people say 1 million. 1 million was a big deal in 2008.
Yeah,
it's not as big a deal now.
Really big deal.
It'll probably still get a sequel, I would imagine. I think they said they're already working on one. Actually,
maybe Bloodborne didn't.
That's true.
Bloodborne sold a lot more than that.
A little more. Well, maybe it wasn't much more complicated than Stellar Blade.
Not really.
Yeah, not really. It's kind of the same thing.
Maybe for the time,
right?
But not now. I mean,
yeah, now it's kind of the same deal. Literally the same deal. So anyway, it's a little interesting to me that PlayStation keeps spending money on these games.
Yeah, I don't know what they see in this one.
I don't either. I mean, it looks okay. Like graphically, it looks good, but
it's like, you know what would probably do better? Bloodborne 2.
Yeah. Probably. I think it definitely would. And
I think you get a guaranteed 3 to 4 million out of Bloodborne 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. Yeah.
But this might be another Stellar Blade.
I mean, my guess is it probably is.
So what are you doing?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know. But again, PlayStation still seems to keep its one foot back in the early aughts. Back in the PS2 era when it just reigned supreme.
They know what got them here.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I mean, that was basically how PlayStation, that's how they got Final Fantasy.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, if you're looking forward to Black Myth Wukong and you're an Xbox owner, you're going to have to wait a little while longer. They haven't said how long you're going to have to wait yet, but my guess is at least 6 months after the PlayStation 5 version, because they don't really sign 3-month exclusivity deals.
Yeah, which is too bad, because if I was going to play this, I would probably want to play it on PC.
Yeah. Well, now I would too. I finally got to play games on my new PC, actually. One of the games in today's show, I finally got to play on my new PC. And the funny part is, because of my job, the first ever game I played on my new rig was probably the last game I would have ever played on my new rig. But that's how life goes sometimes. Duty calls. So anyway, that's the latest update on Black Myth Wukong. Again, I think it's coming August 30th, if I remember correctly.
There's something more important for me that week, I'll tell you that much.
What's that week?
Outlaws.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the same day, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, close.
29th, around there.
It's going to be hard. What a dumb time to release anything.
I mean, I would imagine like probably the crowd that wants to play that is not the crowd that wants to play Outlaws for the most part.
Maybe a little bit.
They see Outlaws as like a baby game.
Right.
And like, oh, it's Ubisoft, I won't support Ubisoft kind of thing. There's a lot of that sentiment around.
Well, that would be a really dumb decision. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. So anyway, that's the latest on Black Myth Wukong. Up next, some strange things have been happening at Nintendo lately. So Nintendo...
Even by Nintendo standards.
So, was about 2 months ago, Princess Peach Showtime was released for Switch. And up until the day of release, we had no idea who was making the game. People had kind of figured it out.
They've always been pretty weird about this.
But lately, Nintendo has become very
now
weird
they're just not. Like, people didn't know who made the Paper Mario thing until the credits rolled, basically.
Yep. So that was another one. And now we have a third one. It's Mario and Luigi Brothership. You remember this was debuted in Nintendo's Direct last week. We talked about it on last week's show. It's the next entry in the Mario and Luigi RPG franchise. And Nintendo will not tell anyone who is developing the game. And adding an extra twist to this is that the studio that made these games in the past was dissolved. It filed for bankruptcy in 2019, I think. And
you're asking for it, naming yourself that.
Yeah. So they were called Alpha Team or something.
Yeah, but dissolve.
Right. And so anyway, the only thing Nintendo will say is that there are some people from the original team working on this game, but it won't say what studio is working on it. And my question is why?
I don't know.
Why does Nintendo not want people to know which internal studios are working on this stuff?
Why does Nintendo do anything?
Yeah. It's
Why do bees bee when bears bear? I don't know why they think that's something to keep secret.
It's ridiculous.
Very weird.
I don't get it. I think it's counterproductive to success as well, because look, there are people who rally around development teams. They find out a team is making a game, they're all over it. They're out there championing that game on social media. They're talking it up to their friends. When you don't know who's making a game, I think that's a hindrance to the game doing well.
Ashes in the Hourglass says that the arguments they're hiding this info so devs don't get harassed like what happened with Splatoon.
Why would people harass the Splatoon development team?
Because it's a multiplayer game and they change things and people get furious about it.
My argument with Splatoon is that it hasn't changed enough over the various entries.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know why Splatoon people would do anything.
Really. Right. That's a good point. But I mean, Ashes in the Hourglass, I can understand that perspective. But Nintendo shares some of the teams for some of its games. It's not 100%. It will share, for big games, it seems like. It's fine telling you which studio internally is working on a game.
Yeah, I mean, if Aonuma's making announcements about something, but he didn't. The Breath of the Wild team didn't do Echoes of
Wisdom. Yeah.
You can assume it's the same team that did Link's Adventure.
Right. And that's what we're doing a lot here is assuming stuff. Because they won't tell you. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just one of those weird things that Nintendo does that other publishers just don't do. And maybe that adds to Nintendo's charm a little bit. I don't know. But it is very weird and awkward. I'm not quite sure I understand the idea behind it. And, again, if developers were harassed in the past, then it should be 100% policy instead of 40% of our games we're not going to tell you. So it's a little strange. I think maybe Nintendo fears that if you find out that it's a B team making the game, that maybe you'll lose interest in the game.
Maybe. I mean, I don't really know individual Nintendo dev teams well enough to have an opinion on that.
I mean, I do. But, there's studios like Intelligent Systems that make the smaller games. And sometimes they'll jump in and work on another game with 3 teams. So I don't know if Nintendo's worried about expectations for its games. If you know the studio isn't one of its big internal ones that work on the Mario games or the Zelda game. I don't know. It's just interesting, and I thought it might be worth discussing. But Nintendo's gonna Nintendo, and I guess from its perspective, it's like, man, we're printing money right now. We can do no wrong, and we're just gonna make decisions the way we want to, and everybody else can just deal with it.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, nothing.
I'm not buying this because they won't tell me who made it. Like, nobody's gonna do that.
Yeah, as somebody who runs a video game website where when you create game pages, you need the name of the developer, and I've got a light case of OCD. It does drive me bonkers to just put Nintendo in as the developer for some of these games, but that's just me. So anyway, it is a little weird that Nintendo isn't being transparent with some of this stuff. When it hasn't been this way in the past, it had no problem doing this. It always shared which team. It would always have it, like, sometimes you had to look in the fine print at the end of a trailer.
People do judge things on teams sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, go ask the people at Sledgehammer about that.
Good point. With Call of Duty, a lot of times, you're right. Yeah.
You know, one thing that I think was interesting, because I had to deal with some film festival stuff in Hollywood, which means some time spent on Santa Monica Boulevard not moving. And it means you get to look at the bus stop ads a lot, and all the bus stops in Hollywood now are digital. So like they scroll. Right. Call of Duty ads everywhere for Black Ops 6
already.
And I've never seen Call of Duty advertised in June before.
Wow, me either.
And there's like there was like banners and stuff. I saw a billboard at one point. Like they're going and like
why?
It's not a game. No Game Pass. Man, I thought it was like, oh, maybe they're advertising Game Pass. No, just Call of Duty and a date. And like I was like, okay.
Maybe Xbox is like, this is our first...
Yeah, we want everybody to know,
soup to nuts Call of Duty that we're in control of. And maybe we want to show the teams who are working on Call of Duty.
No, they're not showing... Oh, show the teams we're supporting them.
That we're supporting them, yeah.
Because there's nothing on the ads that indicate who's making it or Microsoft at all.
Yeah. Because also after all the stuff that happened with them getting rid of the studios, I'm sure Microsoft may be overcompensating a little bit.
I guess it's also covering your bases where it's like, nobody can say we didn't try. You know, it's like, we had advertisements on the street since June.
Which is insane.
Yeah,
that's
I was
really
just surprised.
crazy.
I was like, is that coming sooner than I think? I was like,
I mean, that's like 4 months before the game comes out.
Yeah, because normally mainstream advertising like that, you don't see that happen until 4 weeks out.
Usually a week or two.
3 or 4 weeks is the thing for movies and most games, like big games.
Right,
like you're gonna see the billboard go up
like
3
Call of
weeks.
Duty. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people don't remember it.
Right. Yeah.
I will always go back to that.
Or they go to try to buy it and like, where the hell is it?
Yeah.
They go to GameStop and they're like, where's Black Ops 6?
You want that sweet spot between being aware of it and getting around to going to find it.
Yeah.
And like, I always go back to one of the most useful anecdotes I've ever encountered was back when I used to go to football Sundays at our friend Lawrence's, and it was 2015 was one of the years that we were doing that, and of course we're all a bunch of Star Wars dorks, and we're all talking about Force Awakens and the production of this and the teaser for that and that, and there was a picture of this came out, and Thanksgiving, we would Thanksgiving weekend, it was either Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving weekend, when they first started running commercials for Force Awakens on TV during the football games.
Yeah.
And during the commercial during one of the football games, this woman who was there, who had been there every football Sunday for the whole season, goes, "Oh wow, they're making a new Star Wars movie?" She has been in the room 15 times while we've been talking. Just ignoring the nerds talking about whatever bullshit. And that was the moment she found out a new Star Wars movie. That was 3 weeks before the movie came out. And that movie made $2 billion.
Yeah.
So
that's how it works.
That's how you don't. The mainstream people don't know any of this shit that happens before. Like we talk about like E3, the E3 thing or this trailer or that trailer. Nothing matters.
Oh, no, that never penetrates their shield. Yeah.
Nobody knows that stuff.
No, you're right. Yep. So anyway, Nintendo keeping us in the dark, and I'm not really sure why. Next up, another PlayStation story. So this week, Android Central reported that it has sources inside PlayStation that has told them that basically Sony has completely abandoned all software development for PlayStation VR2.
Let me get my shocked face.
Yeah, it says that there
Has it been a year? When did that come out?
I don't remember, Matt.
Neither do I.
Which is bad. I should remember that, but I don't. I think it has been a year. Mm-hmm. I think so.
Was it like February or March last year or something like that?
It was Q1. Yeah. But I don't remember the exact month. Mm-hmm. As of right now, PlayStation has basically released one real game for PlayStation VR2, and that's Horizon Call of the Mountain, which by most accounts is the best game available for PlayStation VR2 so far. But if you're telling me Sony's going to throw in the towel after releasing 3 moderately budgeted games for one of its platforms. I mean, I hate to say it, but we kind of warned you that this is what PlayStation does.
I called that before it even came out.
Yeah.
Like, it was clearly going to be another one of those things. That's what Sony does.
I mean, the other thing that Sony does is it relies on third parties to support its platforms. And it's like, we're going to sprinkle in the stuff that we work on, but we're going to rely on the big third-party publishers to supply the bulk of the content for us.
And, like, I mean, moving Astrobot away from where it started in VR was not even having a VR mode at least that they showed or talked about. Like, that's the nail in the coffin, as they say. It's not hard evidence, but it's a pretty good indicator.
Yeah. Yep.
We're just gonna rescue this character that we made for this that works really well, and we're just gonna not talk about that.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
I mean, it did work because people are more excited for the new Astrobot game than they've ever been for any Astrobot anything.
Yeah,
so,
or any VR anything.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. So it worked in the end, but I mean, one thing that this does tell me, Matt,
just the palpable disappointment at when the trailer for Batman ran and it turned out to be VR, and you heard the audience go, "Oh,"
the groan.
Like, what else do you need, man? Like, no one wants this shit.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it's coming down to, is that people just don't want it. And I feel like PlayStation was like, well, we did have 1 million people buy this or whatever. We don't want them to hate us. So before we bail on software development for this platform of ours, we're going to make sure that our users who bought it can still get games. So PlayStation was like, look, we put out this little adapter. We do a little to get it to work on PC. And probably our fans will be okay with it.
It's something.
Yeah. And then it's like, you know what? We need to make sure we have PS5 games coming regularly into the pipe.
We got other things to do.
Yeah. And I'm not arguing against that decision. I think it is the right decision to not make PlayStation VR2 games.
I don't understand. I think it was the right decision not to make PSVR 2.
Right. And that was what I was getting at. Like, also my opinion is they never should have made PSVR 2 in the first place.
I assume there was a sunk cost thing or was too far along to kill it or something. Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know how many people. Again,
it doesn't seem like anybody on SIFTD bought PlayStation VR2.
Great piece of hardware, but there's nothing to do with it.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're counting on getting God of War and all these big PlayStation franchises on PlayStation VR2, that is simply just not going to happen. It will be interesting to see what the final 2 big games are from PlayStation for PlayStation VR2. And maybe they will be based on, maybe there is a God of War coming, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like we're probably going to get something like The Getaway 2 or some crap like that.
Well, except they shut that studio down.
That studio's gone now too. And that was also a sign, by the way, because that studio was doing the bulk of the VR development for PlayStation.
Did they do that? They did that one from PSVR 2, the PSVR 1, the crime one everybody liked. That I never actually played.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it. Which
it was
probably
I think it was something crime, actually.
It was like a something. It was like
crime
something.
and punishment or something.
It wasn't that, but it was 2 words.
Yeah.
Blood and
truth or something.
Or blood and loyalty. Yes, I don't know.
Again, it shows you how memorable the game was. So, look, I feel bad for y'all if any of you guys did buy PlayStation VR 2, because you really got one big game, and when it all comes down to it, from PlayStation, which is why you would buy a VR helmet from PlayStation, is to play PlayStation's games on that VR helmet. So, looks like we're reaching the end of the road really quickly with PlayStation VR 2. It could end up being one of the biggest flops in the history of video game platforms.
Yeah, I mean,
it may finish with like 1 million or 2 million sold when it's all done, which is crazy. Even PlayStation VR 1 sold 5 or 6 million. So, not looking like a wise investment from Sony, but we were kind of calling that here on
Gameface. Looking like a wise
Face.
Investment from me.
Yeah, that's right, you bought it. Thank you, by the way. I got to try it out thanks to you. I appreciate that. So anyway, PSVR 2. It won't be long. I'll be digging through the TriCaster to play taps for PlayStation VR 2. Ashes in the Hourglass says, so is VR in general dead now? I mean, I think it's just the same.
Yeah, I mean, the Quest isn't dead.
No.
But
I have friends who love their Quest.
But that's the only living thing in this space, I would argue.
The only thriving thing, I would say.
Yeah, like MetaQuest is the only thing that's got any kind of life in it right now.
Traction.
In the VR space. Obviously, there's use cases and edge cases for like PC things and things like that, but like it's not in terms of actual adoption and a platform that's worth supporting in terms of being a developer, I'd say the Quest's the only thing going right now.
Yep, lots of my friends got the Quest for last holiday season. All of them loved it. They got it, and the next day they were on Facebook saying, "Oh my gosh, this thing is flipping amazing." 2 of my sisters bought them for my brother-in-law's last Christmas, so it is puncturing the casual market a little bit.
That is the use case that you need to delve into to penetrate any kind of real market, because it has to be an impulse play.
Yeah.
It has to be something you just grab, put on, and go. Like, by the time I'm done moving the couch and readjusting where everything goes and plugs into the PS5, I kind of don't want to do. It's like 10 minutes have gone by, and I'm like, maybe I don't want to play this game.
Yeah.
The fact that the Quest is just like, oh, it's right there, grab it, put it on, and play. That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the I understand that they want it wired, they want it connected to the PlayStation 5, they want that power, and the benefit is tangible when you play those games on the high end PSVR2 headset and the visual. I mean, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. But like, there's nothing to fucking do now.
Yeah,
because it's over. Like,
the launch rush came and went, and now there's
like
nothing.
I'm glad I have a good version of that Tales from Galaxy's Edge thing,
right? Which is its best-selling piece of software, by the way.
It's
Shocker.
The most robust piece of software, and it's Star Wars.
Yeah,
so.
Yep, makes sense. So anyway, PlayStation VR2 not off to a great start at all. Next up, we're starting to get a little bit more clarity. We mentioned earlier about how Xbox had cut a couple studios. We're getting a little bit more clarity on why and how those decisions were made. Matt Booty, who is
the funniest name in gaming.
It is. He's kind of like Phil Spencer's right-hand man, I would say. Seems like it. He manages a lot of the studios, what the studios are working on. He's the guy that's making sure that they're delivering. It's kind of his job to make sure there's a steady flow of software.
I don't remember where he came out or he came from. Please tell me he came from the Sea of Thieves team.
He's been there at Microsoft for a while. Yeah. Yeah, he was not a part of Rare, though, although that would make too much sense.
Matt Booty working on the pirate game is pretty funny.
It is very funny. So anyway, we're starting to get some clarity on why these decisions were made. Nobody understood why Arcane Austin was cut, why Tango Gameworks was cut in Japan, and Matt Booty kind of shared their perspective on why they did it. And basically what he's saying is that Tango was cut because of the leadership void. So Mikami had left Tango Gameworks. Mikami created Resident Evil, and he also launched Tango Gameworks. He was the CEO, the founder. And basically what happened was when Microsoft bought Bethesda, and then Tango became a part of Microsoft, he didn't really want to work there anymore. He said he felt like he was no longer the CEO of his own company that he had made. And obviously,
I can understand that.
Sure. And obviously he had been paid out big time in that sale when Bethesda, was bought or whatever. So financially he was made whole, I would argue. But he just decided he didn't want to work there anymore. And according to Matt Booty, once he left, they never were able to find somebody else at that studio to step up and be a leader, which I find really hard to believe because the studio put out Hi-Fi Rush after Mikami was gone, basically. Or Mikami was at least checked out at that point.
Somebody
shepherded that awesome game.
Yeah.
It's like Hi-Fi Rush is a game that was like a sleeper pick for like Game of the Year in some circles. And to say that like they had lost their way without Mikami, that just doesn't add up to me, Matt.
No, it also is a weird precedent to set publicly where it's like you're kind of saying to all your other teams, if your leadership leaves, you're on the chopping block.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
And like that also, it tells all the other heads of the other studios like you're trapped there unless you want to be responsible for what happens afterwards.
Yeah.
Like this is a really shitty thing to say.
It is. It also shows that Microsoft doesn't really have a handle on Japan either.
No.
Because I guarantee you, if it was Arcane and they wanted to keep Arcane going, they could have found a leader to put in place there and kept Arcane going. I don't think they could have done that with a Japanese studio like Tango.
And it's doubly weird with that because it's like you don't have a lot of studios that can do what Tango does.
Right.
So why would you so casually toss it aside?
Yeah, we were looking.
You don't have another company that can make this game.
No.
Not in your stable.
Yeah. I mean, the other game that Tango is famous for, or franchise, is The Evil Within. That franchise, I mean, there's a little bit of...
Yeah, that's an easier thing to duplicate.
Because you got the teams making gears.
But this is the thing that got the praise, this is the thing that got the attention. I'm not saying the sales translated the same.
Right.
But, like why wouldn't you want this in... You could take what happened here and how this game looks and how it was done. Like, this is one of the most notable things about Hi-Fi Rush, I think, is how well they fuse anime and Western visuals together.
That's a good point.
And make like nothing else quite looks like this.
Oh, nothing.
Because it's not either thing.
It also nothing plays like this. This is a hack and slash with like music and rhythm elements, where you like, hack and slash to the beat.
So even if you don't, like that design, like the fact that they got this visual look out of this, like that would be something I'd be like, okay, we need a tier of software that uses this look.
Yeah.
Like I think this is a very appealing visual.
I agree. Yeah. But it's gone.
Yeah,
the Evil Within franchise, gone. And the Evil Within was never like a gigantic seller for Bethesda, but it would sell 1 million or 2 typically. But we're never going to see another entry in that franchise either, likely. So it's just more IP that's just basically been sent out to die.
I'm never going to miss Evil Within, but like, this is a shame, and I didn't finish this game. It didn't hold my attention that long, but there's something here. There's just, there was a verve, a freshness. There's an element of this game. It's like, oh, the people who made this game wanted to make this game.
Well, I want to play more games like this that incorporate music into action games instead of it just being like, hey, I'd follow a bunch of button prompts on a line. I would prefer to play games like this that are more active that still use music because I love music. So
and the fact that this is all kind of integrated, the fact he even runs to the beat, like somebody was leading this team.
Yeah, for sure. Who was the leader that shepherded this game? So if I'm a studio out there, and again, I've mentioned this before, that right now, if you're hiring, you have the pick of the litter with so many awesome people, sadly, who have lost their jobs. But look, if I'm a studio in Japan, I'm looking for the person who led this game, and I'm trying to hire that person. So I don't know what Microsoft is thinking. It does feel like damage control to me. It feels like they came up with some kind of what they thought was a plausible reason.
Yeah, which is a weird thing to think was plausible. And again, if I were a studio head in the Microsoft stable, I would have taken that as a threat.
Yeah.
Like maybe not Todd Howard, because obviously Todd is in a different position, but like a lot of these other teams.
Well, if you're like Machine Games or something like that, you start thinking in the back of your head, maybe I should start polishing up my resume.
But even if you do you want to be? It's more like I can't polish my resume because if I leave, I might be on the hook for all these people losing their jobs.
Yeah,
and there's not a lot of team leaders are going to be willing to do that to their people.
It's true. So I'm not buying it. It doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make sense to me at all that this is why they would make that move. Again, if Hi-Fi Rush was a train wreck, then it's easy. It's an easy sell to people like us, Matt. We're like, oh, well, they just put out a game that got a 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But they put out a game that got nominated for Game of the Year in some places. So what are you doing?
I don't know.
Like, yeah, it didn't sell like what you wanted to, but if you got that kind of skill in your stable, you develop it. You don't shut it down.
Yeah.
Or you find someone in your giant, vast organization if for some reason the people who are already on staff didn't do it enough for you to be a leader, why don't you go find one?
Yeah.
You really think fucking 12,000 jobs have been lost this year? I guarantee you somewhere out there's someone who could lead Tango Gameworks.
Yeah. Well, Link's So Good in chat says the director of Hi-Fi Rush was an American. He was on the 8-4 Play podcast after the game released. And for those of you who don't know, 8-4 is a translation service in Japan comprised mostly of ex-EGM editors. So Mark McDonald and crew, they basically handle translations from Japanese games to English and make sure that the cultural stuff is handled correctly and all that kind of jazz. So also great people, good friends of mine that I've known for a really long time, but I haven't seen for a really long time because they don't come back from Japan very often anymore. No. They used to, but not anymore. So there was an American leading the team. That wasn't good enough for Microsoft. That makes it even more strange.
Even weirder. Yeah.
What an interesting twist. Thank you for the context, Link So Good. Quister says, it's Microsoft's job as a publisher to sell the game. The failure is entirely theirs.
That's true.
Once you greenlight, you're right. It's their job to greenlight the game. Yep.
I mean, there's no reason that game... I mean, the appeal of that game goes much broader than its sales indicate. Mm-hmm. And it's Microsoft's job to get that word out and convince people of that. Yep. And it barely made a blip.
Yeah. So anyway...
No billboards for that one.
No, definitely not. So rest in peace, Tango Gameworks. It really is a shame. I feel like they're a talented studio, but I do hope that most of the people working there find new gigs because
hopefully Mikami starts up something new and brings a lot of.
He's already been talking about it. Yep. So
so maybe we'll get a Malice without soon enough.
Yep. Next up, we finally got the first look at Madden NFL 25. The weird thing about this year's Madden, Matt, is that there was already a Madden 25. It was called Madden 25 for the 25th anniversary of Madden. Yeah. And so now we're actually at 2025, 2024, and the game needs to be called Madden 25, and they're like, you know what?
Should have called it Madden NFL 25 AD.
Yeah. That's funny. So they're just like, you know what? Figure it out. We're going to call it Madden 25 anyway. But we finally...
You're probably not going to confuse those two.
No, probably not.
The other one's old enough.
But example, like, it confuses the hell out of Google.
Yeah.
If you search for the game. I mean, it is an SEO issue for EA. Like, if you search for Madden 25, 80% of the results right now are for the game. And I think it was like 2013 or 2014. I can't quite remember. But most of the results are for that old game and not the new one. And that, over time, as they release more media for this new one, it'll change. But as of right now, it's like SEO is not working out for EA in this case. But anyway,
really, we didn't want to break their. I mean, you could just call it 2025.
That's true.
Like that would have solved that problem.
It just doesn't follow. Then it wouldn't follow the nomenclature of how they usually.
But you want Google to work, or do you want to have all your?
Or do you want your OCD satisfied? Yeah, seriously.
Especially in a series where people usually just sell last year's and buy the new one.
Yeah.
It's not like there's a ton of people with the whole run of Madden up on the shelf somewhere.
I do. I have like...
I'm sure you do.
I have like 40 sports games for Xbox 360.
I love the idea that there's someone out there who's just like, it's like, I feel like playing Madden 95 today. Yeah. It's like I'm going to go back to the day.
I mean, sometimes, like, maybe they want to play when Michael Vick was the best player in the game.
But can't you just, like, make that?
You can. Yeah, you can just make the player if you want to. Yeah, there's really no reason to have old sports
games. I have nostalgia for a certain old sport. I love the original NFL Game Day because it's what we played in my dorm room for
Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey.
Yeah.
I still love to play that. I have friends back in Central PA. When I come home for the holidays, they're like, you want to play some Wayne Gretzky? And I'm like, F yeah, let's play some Wayne Gretzky.
That one NHL game from the early 2000s when they made the announcers funny. You remember that? Remember there was a
NHL Hits?
It wasn't Hits. It was a real NHL game, but like the presentation was kind of humorous.
Oh, it was 2K's NHL game.
Yeah, I think so. And like they had like announcements where it's like don't trust the smiling penguin.
Yeah.
Good luck, Mr. Spot.
Yeah. Right? I actually went to an event in Vegas for that and met Alex Ovechkin at that event. And he was the biggest douchebag I've ever interviewed.
Oh, wow.
He tried to pick up our talent. Yep.
Oh.
He gave her his phone number and his hotel room number where he was staying.
Wow.
We tried to interview him. He wanted nothing to do with us, man. He was like, you guys are scum. Get away from me. It was awful.
I remember...
I've interviewed a lot of celebrities, man, and he was the absolute worst.
Yeah.
His legs, though, Matt, his thighs were like twice the size of my torso. It literally, I thought it was fake. I thought his legs were fake. It was freaky how big his legs were. I was like, oh, they were like literally tree trunks, his legs. But he was a total jerk, man. I was so disappointed in him.
Sometimes you wonder, if they don't want to be there, they don't want to be there.
It was a weird thing where he was like on the Las Vegas Strip skating on this weird material that they had just developed that you could literally ice skate on this like plastic sheeting. And he was like, I'm sure he was afraid he was going to get injured skating on the crap. And so I'm sure there's something that was going into it. But anyway, he was a douchebag. And I've never liked Alex Ovechkin anyway because I'm a Penguins fan and they're like his arch rival. So anyway, they did share some details about the new Madden when they released his trailer, although some of the stuff had been released beforehand. But I'm just going to say right away, like Boom Tech is the big feature that you're seeing right there in this trailer. It's basically like a physics-based tackling system, but this is like I've said about Madden before. They try to trot out these quote-unquote new features, and they're things that they have had before. The passing cone is something that comes and goes in Madden. The physics-based tackling, they've been trying to market this crap for like 12 years now. And obviously the technology gets better, and it should get better, but year after year I play it, and I can't ever really tell the difference. So the big thing in this year's game is supposed to be physics-based tackling with Boom Tech. It's like the next generation of their Field Sense technology, which was their physics-based stuff from last year.
I mean, they do this footage almost does look like the players are actually interacting with each other for once. Like the physics-based tackling is kind of the white whale of this series.
Where it's the holy grail.
Because the whole like canned animation thing just doesn't quite cut it, especially when you get the fidelity of like several years ago. They're at to a point where like that just doesn't doesn't work.
Yeah, because you can see. It's
like, you can see everybody snap into their little can.
Yeah, on PlayStation and N64 when things are a little blurry, like, you can get away with that crap a little bit, but not anymore.
Yeah, this is you need that. You need to have like the hands connect right and the feet connect. Yeah, all that. Has
the locking up on the line of scrimmage while blocking, all that stuff. It matters. Some of the other stuff that they're working on for this, signature styles is going to be a big thing. So seeing receivers run routes the way they really run them in the NFL. Certain running backs run with the particular gait that other running backs don't have. It's all that kind of stuff. There's also brand new running controls. There's brand new catching controls. There's new pre-play mechanics. They said that they're focusing on the fundamentals of blocking, but that has been the biggest problem with Madden literally since day one, is the canned blocking. Like, eventually you can find plays where the computer just can't figure it out. It'll never block it, and you get up with money plays that have to patch out. They've reworked the hit stick. They're calling it Hit Stick Reloaded. Again, they've reworked the hit stick like 80 times already. There's a new balance and recovery system. Basically, when you're running with the ball, if you get knocked off balance, even if it doesn't look like you should be tackled, like, you'll fall down still. Like, if your momentum's going in the wrong direction and you're not perfectly on balance, that could be pretty cool. You can also piss people off if they think they have a breakaway and they just run out of bounds.
Like, I'm predicting some FIFA level clips out of that one.
It might be.
You better have that one tuned for release, boys.
Yeah. And then there's 2 new commentary crews. They have 2 different crews in this game, which if you play enough Madden, you know you eventually you will get very sick of the announcing. So having 2 crews, that should help. And then the final...
we mix and match them so, like, one of them doesn't understand what the other one is saying the whole time, and they just are randomly talking?
Matt, that's probably going to happen anyway. Let's just be honest. And then the final thing that they're talking about is that they've completely revamped franchise mode, but they haven't gone in depth on that stuff yet. So those are the big bullet points for the new Madden, which really aren't big bullet points at all. I'll just be honest, I'm pretty disappointed in it. And I'll be honest as well, I was really disappointed in Madden last year. You can go back and look at my impressions of Madden from last year. It was like, I was like, where are the changes? Where are the tweaks? It actually felt like it was worse than the year before. That also played out in the review scores. This aggregate score was one of the lowest I've ever seen for Madden. So it doesn't look like things are shaping up all that much for this year's version either. But again, we go back to trying to create a game like this year after year in 365 days. Like, you're only going to get so many improvements when you have 1 year to make a game. So this is just another thing where it should just turn into a platform. EA will never do it because of Ultimate Team, where it makes all its money. And so instead we keep getting...
they'd only be releasing 2 games a year.
Right. So, exactly. Then they'd only have like 2 games a year. So it's not going to happen. Unfortunately, we keep getting these incremental changes. I wouldn't call them upgrades. I would say incremental changes to Madden year after year, and Madden NFL 25 looks like yet another one. Gamescom is coming up soon. We've been talking about that a little bit, obviously, because we just made it through not E3 2024, but Gamescom will be coming up in August. And we got some bad news this week. The only one of the big 3 that is going to Gamescom this year is Xbox. That surprise you at all, Matt?
No. I mean, I guess it kind of surprised me that Xbox is bothering.
I mean,
they're the only ones with an actual lineup. So.
Well, that, and it's the one that needs it. I mean, Xbox is in last place. It needs every chance it can get to promote itself to every audience, and particularly in Europe, where Xbox Series X is doing horribly. So it makes sense for Xbox to go. Does it make sense for Nintendo and Sony to not go?
I mean, sure. Like, Sony has already shown they don't really need live show presence, and Nintendo has always been flaky about that stuff anyway.
Are we ever going to see PlayStation at a convention again?
Probably not.
It feels like we're not. It really feels like we're
unless they do their own, but it doesn't seem like they would have any interest in that.
No. It's pretty crazy, really. I mean, you could say they're a little bit of a pioneer in bailing.
Yeah.
I mean,
EA did it first.
Right. But EA still... Well, actually, EA doesn't show up at Gamescom, does it?
No.
Yeah, I don't think it does. Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, you get the impression EA did that largely because they realized they had nothing to show, and better be integrated in other people's presentations if you can.
EA makes more sense because, again, as we just joked, it only puts out like 2 games a year.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you do conventions?
But Sony clearly just didn't feel the need to continue paying the ESA obscene amounts of money to be present at a show they did not need to be at.
Or the folks at Gamescom, apparently. So I'm sure, maybe, does that work out for Jeff Keighley's show, or does that hurt Jeff Keighley's show?
I don't know.
Probably helps a little bit.
I would imagine that Jeff is counting on Sony for much this year.
I don't think anybody should.
No.
Honestly.
Clearly, this is a rest year for them.
Yeah.
So.
And look, I feel bad for folks in Europe who go to Gamescom hoping to check out, the biggest games in the industry come from the platform holders.
Because PlayStation's much bigger there. It's a dominant thing in Europe.
Yeah, for sure. But anyone thinking of making the sojourn to Germany for Gamescom, just a heads up that two of the big boys are not going to be there.
Yeah, unless Jeff pulls some coup off with Sony.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a case where Jeff gets some exclusives for his presentation from Nintendo or PlayStation. Yeah, I mean,
it could be like a big Astrobot blowout or something.
Yeah, which we would have joked about just a few months ago, but now
it's about pretty much the top of the list for them.
It's really crazy. It really is. So it does look like it's going to be a little bit of a subdued Gamescom for this year. It just feels like in general, just conventions are just over.
Yeah, well, video game expo things.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but I mean,
I think most people would definitely prefer to watch a good, clear, nobody's in your way, didn't wait in line for 4 hours presentation online, and then play a demo.
Yeah, Gamescom is awesome though because it is all consumer based. It's all just folks who love games who go.
Yeah, but it's still huge and crowded and smelly and annoying. Like it's like some of that's just
expensive hotels.
Yeah, some of this I think just the audience, like a bunch of the audience has either aged out of the area where we'd want to do that or be able to do that. If you've got families or kids or whatever, you can't just drop everything and go to Cologne and spend all that money and spend all that time doing that. And then like the newer kids coming up don't even have any interest in doing that.
Yeah.
And it's also just like it's not self-expressive enough. Like the Comic-Cons still do well, the Anime Cons still do well.
Yeah.
But those aren't about corporate presentation. They're about fans getting together to have fun.
Yep.
This is this kind of thing is always going to be basically a giant commercial that happens to have a community that grew up around it, and basically the strength of the community that grew up around it is going to determine whether that show continues or not. E3 had none because it wasn't a community. It was it was an industry event. This had a community around it. Gamescom and so is Tokyo Game Show. So those are going to last a little longer, but I don't know how much longer interest is going to maintain.
I do wonder if it's going to affect attendance for sure. Not having the two of the big three there, not having.
Having been a couple times, attendance could stand to drop a bit just for the.
It's insane. It was for a while. It was insane. Yeah. But I've just started noticing in general, Matt, lately that in-person events have not been doing well over the last couple years. So it used to be Coachella, literally the world's biggest music festival. Really, is what it comes down to. It's the biggest. It used to be when those tickets went on sale, you needed to be on the internet and jamming refresh trying to get tickets, and if you didn't, you're gonna have to buy them off Craigslist for like double the price. And those tickets are already $400. You don't spend $1,000 for general admission tickets to Coachella. They had tickets available for Coachella. You could walk up to Coachella this year. That is insane.
Because again, the people that made Coachella are in their 40s and 50s now.
The other problem too
aren't going to go do that anymore.
That's part of it, and they're starting to book acts that appeal to the younger kids instead of to people our age. And I don't think they care, Matt.
They don't care, and they don't have the money for it.
Because
they don't have the time. And
that's part of it.
You can't take the time off work. Like it's a whole thing.
Yeah. So I've mentioned in the past that I have a lot of friends who work in the rave scene, the EDM scene, whatever the hell you want to call it. And I have friends who work on EDC, which is the biggest rave in the world that happens in Las Vegas every year. That also, same deal as Coachella. Sell out in 5 minutes. You got to sit there hoping you get a ticket. This year, if you watch the live stream of EDC, there were some stages where there were 30 people. I'm not exaggerating, Matt. 30 people watching a DJ. I was like, holy crap. Weekend ended. I called my buddy. I'm like, dude, what's going on? He's like, what's going on? Like, they are panicking. Because they have these huge deals that they sign with the Las Vegas Speedway that go into like 15 years, and the place was half empty this year.
Well, they should call it a food and wine festival because then you won't have any room to move.
Right.
Judging by my experiences here.
Oh, really?
Because the thing is,
it feels like the kids don't want to go to stuff in person.
They do, but not that stuff.
Yeah.
Like you go to like a Ren Fair or a fucking food and wine thing or you can't move. It's packed. Everything you want to do is pack for stuff like that, but go to like some kind of thing we would have thought.
And is kids or is it people our age?
Both.
Okay.
Everything.
Interesting.
It just depends what there's certain things that still pack them in and certain things don't.
Yeah.
Go to Disneyland. You won't be able to fucking move.
But this is a recent phenomenon. This has only happened the last couple years. Like before that, it was like
So some of that is also dropping off because, like, for a long time, everything was super crowded after the pandemic because everybody wanted to go do things. I think people are kind of getting over that.
Yeah.
And
you're right. There was a rush.
Yeah.
So people were pent up for a couple years and they wanted to get out. Maybe they just spent all their money in the first couple years.
Yeah, I mean, got it out of their system.
Yeah. Now they're being a little more reasonable. Yeah. Retro Modern Gamer says, rock concerts I went to post-COVID in Texas were always sold out. They were. It was insane at first, after COVID let up, and we could actually go and do stuff. You couldn't go to do anything or see anything for a really long time. Now it feels like everything's come full circle to be almost like the opposite. Erebus Jones says, try getting Glastonbury tickets. Crappiest lineup probably ever. Still sold out in minutes. Okay, maybe things are different in Europe then. Yeah, I am definitely just talking about the U.S. for sure.
Cruel World sold out pretty quick.
Did it?
Yeah, I think.
But there's like there was a couple festivals here in Pasadena that had anemic crowds. Like I watched videos of the biggest bands from those on YouTube, and the crowd is sparse, like huge openings and gaps. So I don't know. It feels like there's a little bit of a revolt against in-live stuff right now, but maybe not in Europe. If you're saying Glastonbury is still selling out in minutes.
I think it depends on what it is, and video game stuff is going to be the first to go.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, at some point, people got to wise up that this stuff is just a giant commercial.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like PAX where you go to play games with people.
Yeah, right.
You're just going to be pandered to.
Or do other stuff, too, like play tabletop games or, things that interest you. So, anyway, just something to keep in mind as these conventions seem to
because I'll tell you, like, I follow a lot of board game stuff, too. Like, that makes me think, Dice Tower is a big channel. They do a West convention in Las Vegas. They do one in Florida. They do one overseas. They do a cruise, and they're always sold out. They just sold out. I think the one upcoming one this week or something. So they're having no problem filling their venues. I think it depends what it is. Like it's harder to justify a big slick corporate thing these days. I don't think the kids catch on to it. And I think our cohort is too old and too tied down to get away anymore.
Too much responsibility.
Even Burning Man isn't.
You're right.
Isn't the
people that we know very well that go to Burning Man a lot? I talked to a few of them not too long ago, and because I was asking them, I'm like, "Hey,
did you get stuck in the mud?"
In the mud, and they're like, "I didn't go," and I'm like, "What? You didn't go to Burning Man?" They're like, "Nope, just kind of over it." And I'm like, "What? Yeah. It's like your life."
Part of it might just be that there hasn't, there isn't an equivalent of things like that for the younger crowd. The younger crowd never created that for themselves.
Yeah,
they were all watching Dr. Disrespect.
And we're trying to drag them into our events. You're right. That's a good point, actually. Yeah. Okay.
Reincorporation is the key to humor. You bring that back.
It's easy. Low-hanging fruit. And then our final...
It comes in threes, so watch for me to do that again in about an hour.
Mighty Pony Girl says Gen Con this year is going to be an absolute meat brick. I've never heard that phrase before.
Yes.
What does that mean? It means
so crowded,
all guys.
So crowded. It's just meat. It's a brick of meat.
Oh man, the visuals.
Gen Con. I mean, tabletop gaming has exploded. Obviously,
it has,
and all those conventions are worse than ever in
Wow.
terms of crowding. Last year, Gen Con, there was a big problem actually because that was the first place you could buy Lorcana, which was the big Disney trading card game, and the whole point. It wasn't important that it was a Disney trading card game, which was basically like a Magic style game. It wasn't as important that it was that. What was important was all the art was new. It was original. So you had trading card people. You had
Disney art people.
You had people that were interested in both of those things, and you had people that are kind of interested in Magic the Gathering but never got into it because all those games are so expensive and weird, but like Disney, and we're sort of like, oh, maybe I'll try it. The line, like the fire...
But you have the people who want to just flip them for money.
And that too, for sure. The fire marshal had to shut the line down. Like, it was, like there was a point where like people were like showing like, okay, the main area was just full and the line went out to here and you couldn't get it, and then they're like showing other locations, like nobody. Like something like a third of the convention was in line for the Disney thing.
Wow.
And no one even knew how many there were. Like it was a madhouse.
Wow.
And so one of the things about Gen Con is you can buy games there before they hit retail. Like, but companies will bring a limited number of games of a new game, and you can buy it there. And so especially the first day, the rush is just like I'm interested in that, but I would never put myself through that at this point.
No thanks.
It's like, what?
I'm good.
It's like watching the videos of Gen Con, or like even what's the Georgia, like Dragon Con, watching of that thing. To me, that's the equivalent of like the nerd equivalent of watching like the traffic cameras on Thanksgiving Eve on the 405. You're just like, well, I'm not there.
And I'm happy about that. It's funny. Okay, our final story for housekeeping for episode 392 is something that happened this morning. And
I saw it last night.
Oh, it popped up last night?
Yeah, I saw the video last night.
Oh, okay. Well, apparently, and we actually knew about this already. We knew
there were leaks about this before, but this is the first time
we've seen
actual proof.
And there is a reboot coming of Jet Set Radio, the Dreamcast inline skating, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater-ish, graffiti-flavored action game from the Dreamcast era. They are rebooting it, and it's coming back. And against my better judgment, I'm going to show the footage here on GameFace.
Well, that's the old one.
Yeah, that's the old one. Here is the new one. This may get a copyright strike or something funky from Sega, but I'll deal with it. Wow. What do you think, Matt?
I think it looks good.
I mean, this is obviously in development footage.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff is
the main thing with this, I love these games. That's a cool thing. You can hop up like that. So that's a very good change. You need that ability. You need to kind of lean into the platform a little more because that was one of the shortcomings of them. It looks very promising. The big thing with this is, for God's sake, you have to get the music.
Yeah.
Like, you have to get the music. Bring back, I can't remember his name, begins with an N. Naganuma? I can't remember his name.
I don't remember.
The guy who had Wave Master, who did all the music. Like, you have to bring him back. You have to do not replace the music in this game with generic modern hip hop. Like,
well, this looks like it's an open world game.
It looks like the city because the old one was
pseudo.
It was like you went to different locations and they were kind of, it was the Witcher style.
Yeah.
If you make the city fully traversable, and that's crazy, that would be a cool move.
Yeah.
But
what was that game, the indie game that came out that mimicked it and was you hated it, and I thought it was okay.
Bomb Rush Cyberfunk or something like that.
I
did not like that at all.
Yeah.
Naganumi. Yeah, Hideki Naganumi. He was the head of all the music for the Jet Set games, and you don't bring him back, you're gonna lose this.
That's half of the vibe of the game.
You have to do it. If you don't have that lineup, if you don't have Wave Masters tracks in there, you fail.
I noticed they had some of the same graffiti tags.
Yes, some of it was very recognizable.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're gonna do it right.
It looks early, but who knows how old this footage is as well.
Yeah, no way of telling how long.
Yeah.
I would probably expect this, given where we started hearing all the rumors about it when they announced their sort of resurrection thing that
where they're reviving all these franchises.
I feel like we're probably gonna see this next year.
Yeah, that'd probably be my guess, or at the very least next year they'll start blowing it out and showing it to us officially. Also, the person who leaked that footage, they're probably gonna get caught. It's like you can see their desktop. Seriously, you can see the tabs on their desktop. Should have cropped the footage.
There was speculation that because there was that one leaker that was revealed to be an American guy pretending to be a Japanese woman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Megumi or something like that.
Oh, really?
Midori. It was one of the leakers, and turned out to be just some dude pretending to be a Japanese person and speaking in broken English. It's all very weird. This was one of the things that Midori said was a thing back before all that came out.
Right.
And there are some people who believe that this is a desperation sort of see, I wasn't lying sort of leak, but there's no proof of any of that. But that was some speculation I saw that all of a sudden it was very convenient that this popped up right after that was revealed.
I feel pretty confident that it's not fake.
No, that doesn't look fake to me.
No, I don't think anyone would spend that much time to create a fake game that, let's be honest, a lot of people don't give a crap about.
If this was Red Dead Redemption 3,
then I'd be
one thing. Yeah, but this is very niche.
And I wouldn't have run it in the show.
And also, a faker probably wouldn't have been able to do that thing where he hand plants back up to the next level. That is.
Well, that's now you're coming up with gameplay.
That's the most exciting thing in that trailer as an old school fan. It's oh, look at that. That's one of the things that not being able to hop up on things easily was a big problem in the old. And if you create something like that, that's a great addition. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Not only is it nice to know it exists, but there's a couple things in there. It's oh, that's a good idea. Well done.
I'm pretty happy with how it looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what we can see of it.
I like the redesign. I think Beat looks good in that with the hoodie and everything.
Yeah.
I know what it is the instant I see it, so that's a good sign.
That's good too. Yeah. Although most people that are buying games now probably have no idea what it is.
Yeah, well, it's a shame. I mean, you can get Jet Set Radio on a lot of platforms. That's the remaster.
There's been Dreamcast collections and
the tragedy is, I mean, I don't like it as much as the first one, but the Jet Set Radio Future you can't get anywhere.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, and probably because of the music stuff, I would imagine. I mean, I know they say they can't get it to run on Xbox. I'm like, give me a fucking break.
Okay, good one. Yeah,
it's got to be music stuff.
Yeah, licensing. So anyway, Jet Set Radio Future is coming back, or just Jet Set Radio, I guess. I hope that they give it a real title. I hate how the big thing now, Matt, is that when you reboot it, you just give it the same title, and then like in your database, you have to put like the name of the title and then the date, so you know it's not the original one, it's the newish one.
Oh, Mighty Pony Girl points. I forgot at Gen Con last year, someone also stole $300,000 worth of Magic cards from a dealer.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Gen Con's wild, man.
Well, remember it? Wasn't it Comic Con last year? The guy lost a $30,000 comic. Some dude just walked up and just stole it right out of his and took it off. And then I don't think he ever got it back.
I don't see how you would. I mean, the one advantage of that is that there's only so many of that comic out there, and most dealers are going to be honest about it, and when they see it, they're going to report it.
That's what he said. I saw an interview with him. He's like, I'm just hoping that there are other dealers like me who will refuse to buy it and will then report it.
Like I know people that do like reselling and like Golden Apple people and all that. Like if I hear about anything, like somebody had like a collection of toys or whatever stolen, I know there's like 3 different people I can tell that to and be like, keep an eye on it. They have a whole network. If somebody tries to sell like a plastic cake Jawa in the next 10 days, they know that it probably came from that stolen collection, and they're basically gonna like, they're gonna, let me appraise this for a second and then basically call the cops.
Yeah,
like they look out for each other because everybody knows that
it's a community.
It's a community.
Yeah. Yep.
Even the people that are spending money and paying, there's no rivalry there really.
Yeah.
Not when it comes to something like that, because everybody's vulnerable to that.
That's true. Yep. Well, there you go. That's our housekeeping for GameFace, episode 392. We're about to get into the heart of the show, where we'll kick things off with Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. Before we do that, it's time to hear a word from our sponsor, LS Cream. LS Cream is a fine cream liqueur created by fellow gamer and sifter Stevens Charles. It's inspired by an ancestral recipe from Haiti called Cray Mass, and a double gold winner for its original taste at the New York Wine and Spirit International Competition. LS Cream can be enjoyed on the rocks or as a mixer for drinks with its rich blend of fresh cream and neutral grain spirits with notes of coconut, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg. It's great in coffee or to make espresso martinis. To learn more, discover amazing drink recipes, or to track down your own bottle using a handy store locator, head to creamls.com/sifted. That's creamls.com/sifted. Okay, people, so Matt and I love LS Cream. You guys do too. If you bought a bottle, I know you guys love LS Cream as well. Well, LS Cream has actually run into a bit of an issue, and I wanted to bring it to your attention here. So basically what happened was they are a company from Canada. Stevens Charles is from Montreal, and they need to work on distribution into the United States. And they've been working with the distributor all this time. That's how you guys can find it in America. That's how you can go to creamls.com/sifted and find bottles local to you or have it delivered. They had a distributor in the U.S. Well, as it turns out, the distributor has kind of screwed over LS Cream, and they're about to work on this big production run, and the distributor is keeping them from doing it. And so LS Cream has decided to try to find a new U.S. distributor. And in order to do that, they need a big chunk of money. And so they have started an Indiegogo campaign to raise money to find a new distributor so that they can basically scale the company to where it deserves to go and where it needs to go. We're not sharing the URL for the Indiegogo here live on the show, but if you're watching the archive, either on sifted.net or on YouTube, go down below and we have a link to their Indiegogo campaign. As we've said a million times, the people at LS Cream are incredible. They're gamers, they're sifters just like us, and we try to support people who are just like us as much as we can. So if you're interested in helping fund the future of LS Cream, go to the Indiegogo campaign. Again, there's a link down below, both here on Sifted and on YouTube. We would appreciate it very much. And obviously the owner, Stevens Charles, who is always in here dropping free subs for you guys in our live chat. He would appreciate it very much as well. And we just want to say that we just love LS Cream and we want to see the company thrive. And again, if you're looking for a bottle of your own, go to creamls.com/sifted. All right. With that, it's time to talk about Elden Ring. Matt, the first thing I want to say about Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is as somebody who has found From Software's games to maybe a little bit too challenging and a little bit too intimidating, and I've yet to finish one of its games. And a lot of people have ridiculed me with the slogan, "Get Good." It has been therapeutic to see over the last few days those same fans who have been telling me to get good for the last 10 years need to tell themselves to get good, because the fans are freaking out because this DLC is too hard. What do you think about that, Matt? You've been playing it. I have not played it. You guys know I'm not going to play it, but Matt has been playing it. What, is it too hard?
I don't think it's that hard.
Really?
But largely because I'm a magic build, and I don't really need to engage with most of the enemies directly. Like if you're a sword and board, or like if you got one of your high end melee builds, like you got to reevaluate how you approach everything. And I can understand why people would be upset about that, but that's also
carpet bomb the reviews on Steam.
But that's also just how it's. There's part of me that's sort of like, is this your first From Software DLC? It's like that's what
it might be for some people.
I mean, it's a bigger audience, so yeah, that's probably true. But like that's what From Software DLC is. They analyze how people play the game, and then they specifically design the DLC to short circuit that.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to me that, I mean, I wonder how many of those people, the people that are carpet bombing the reviews, have played these games before or played the DLC of these games before. The DLC From DLC is hard.
Yeah.
The Bloodborne.
We've been telling people
the
for
Old
weeks.
Hunters is one of the hardest things I have ever played. I have not gotten anywhere in that. That is probably the most brutal add-on I have ever seen in a video game. Is the Old Hunter, the Bloodborne DLC. It's expert mode for expert mode. It's crazy.
You say that? That's all I need to hear.
This is not as extreme, I would say. But one thing I will say is that, again, it is the thing where they take all these things and they analyze how people play the game, and then they just break it. Mm-hmm. They design. I mean, one of the first things a lot of people do when they walk into a boss room is they summon their shade. You summon the mimic or whatever their ashes, whatever they're going to do. Almost every boss in this game has an opening attack that can just hit you across the room to disrupt you from doing that. Like they learn people do that, so they just hit you with. A lot of times they'll just get hit right away. I've been killed before I could move a couple times.
No thanks.
And it's just sort of how it goes. Yeah, so I've played probably 4 or 5 hours total. I've beaten the lion, the
first boss.
He's optional, so he's not technically the first boss. So I guess, but he's the first major boss I found. I mean, the first one I ran into. It seems to be the first one most people seem to run into. It took me 4 tries.
Wow, that's nothing.
I mean, I am summoning my guy and summoning the NPC to help, and standing off the side and casting spells at him and stuff. I don't use Mimic because my Mimic is useless because I'm a sorcerer. So then the Mimic, the AI doesn't know how to use. So I summon. I will usually summon Black Teach, who is the fast dagger guy who can cast bleed. Because a lot of bosses are weak to bleed, and having. It gives you, because so many of the bosses in these games, and Elden Ring this might be part of why everybody's so mad. The bosses in this DLC, more than the rest of the game, more than anything I think they've ever made, are dodge this really long ass combo and then get one hit in.
It does seem like
do it again. It takes forever.
I was just watching a lot of people play this. I didn't play it myself, but even the rank and file enemies, their combos are 8 hits.
Yeah, there are. So you'll run into enemies. A lot of the enemies, you'll see the shades, the dark shade people, and kind of things they're 1 hits. There's a lot of 1 and 2 hit enemies in it, but every once in a while they'll throw in one little better than the others guy, and they'll jump in, and you'll be like, oh, you're taking more hits, and then they'll kill you in 3 hits. They're every once in a while you got to be on your toes, even out in the world, because you'll run into. If they do that at the very beginning, you run across this big open field, and it's like, oh, cool. There's like a little shake. Oh, those are easy. And then this like dude with these fucking blades jumps down from off the top of these ruins, and if you're not ready for him, you're gonna die. Like, that's it. And one of the things I've noticed is that the enemies in this, especially the bosses, they're all about long combos. Some of these bosses, like, they would be more at home in Sekiro.
Oh, really?
Like in a game where you can parry more efficiently. And it's such a contrast because a lot of people have compared this to Dark Souls 2. And I actually agree with it. I think Dark Souls 2 is the closest comparison to Elden Ring, both the vanilla game and the DLC so far. And that's not an insult. Dark Souls 2 is my favorite game in the 3 Dark Souls games.
I actually didn't know that.
It was partly because that's the one that had finally clicked with me on.
Right.
But also I just like that one the most. I just think it has the most. And I'll tell you, you go back to the Dark Souls 1 or 2 after playing this for a while, and you're like, oh, you mean I only have to dodge one attack? They just do the big sphere. That's it.
Now I can lay into you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different thing. Like there's this game incorporates Bloodborne and Sekiro enemy design, and basically says try to deal with this with Dark Souls character control, asshole. And Shadows of the Erdtree does that to the nth degree. That lion boss is brutal. I didn't have a lot of trouble with him, but I can see it because he jumps across the room. He can cast area of effect spells and then hit you with a beam spell and knock you into the area effect spell. And then he can cast a different one that's a different element, so you might not even be ready for that. And he does a lot of delayed attack. I guess one of the hardest things in this game to deal with is when an enemy does they have attacks that they kind of stop for a second.
Oh, that's the worst,
and then come down. He has at least 2 of those.
That drives me crazy.
That was very hard. I just fought right when you were here. I was going through the I can't remember the name of it. It was like a jail. It's a dungeon. It's a little dungeon. And at the end of it was this guy, demi-human swordsman Own or something like that. And he's just this little dude. He can teleport a little bit, and he did 6-7 hit combo, and I could take 2 hits. 2 hits, I was dead. Yeah. And his combos were 6 and 7 long. And he could do the Millennia style.
Look at this enemy right here that he's fighting.
Yeah, that's.
He just doesn't stop. He just keeps attacking.
Yeah, that's a good example. Well, that's a player.
Oh, that's another player?
I think so. With the red.
Oh, really?
That's a player.
Interesting.
Or maybe, That's
he takes a flask. Yeah, it is a player. Wow, it's a duel.
Yeah, so it's So it was interesting to me to see that, and I did. So while you were here, so you came over and you saw me running through that little. I was dropping down the pots when you went upstairs and I got to that guy. There's no site of grace there. It's a dungeon, so you have to beat him or give up. And so I went in and I beat him and went back to the site of grace, saved, and came upstairs because it was almost 1 at that
Perfect
point.
timing.
But it's so it took me, I would say, 10 tries to kill him.
Oh, okay, that's not bad either, actually.
That's a lot of tries for me.
Yeah.
In fact, if you hadn't been
That's nothing for me.
If you hadn't been here and I didn't know I had to save, get somewhere to save and quit the game because it was obviously not going to stay on for 3 hours while we did the show, I probably would have walked away from it and come back in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. But you managed to beat it.
Yeah, I just got and
the stars align.
And here and you mentioned this when we were talking about it earlier with like the guy who you got the B-roll from, but I will mention it to reinforce. The main way I beat him is because I am the most glass of cannons. You can again.
Matt's character just looks at enemies and they just die.
Yeah, I disintegrate things. But if anything gets in close, it's like 3 hits and I'm dead. Because I am using double of the talismans that up your sorcery but drop your damage too.
Yeah.
So I'm taking probably I'd say 30% more damage because of those.
Right, and in this game, it's a big deal.
So what happened there is like the way I figured out to beat, because he was just overwhelming. I couldn't dodge. Like you can't dodge fast enough. It's not Sekiro. I couldn't dodge fast enough. By the time I was finished dodge rolling, and I have a medium dodge roll, it's not like I'm way down.
Yeah.
By the time I was finished dodge rolling, he was already hitting me with the next attack.
Oh, geez.
And so I switched to what was basically this is the watchword of this DLC. Have something that can smash.
Yeah.
Have a heavy weapon that can hit. And so I mean, I don't have that because I don't have I do have high strength, but I don't have the equipment to really get up close and bash things.
Yeah.
So I just equipped the Moonlight, was that Azura's Greatsword, Azula's Moonlight Greatsword spell, where you basically summon the Moonlight Greatsword as a spell, and you can slash with it. And 2 hits from that stunned him.
Oh.
And so boom, and it would knock him out of attacks. I could break his combo by hitting. If I could wind up before he got to me, by the time he teleported in front of me, I would be hitting him.
Right.
And I could just whack, 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 whack. The only limit was running out of stamina or mana. And then I had to back out, drink some potions, and then go back at him again. So basically 2 rounds of that, and he was dead.
Oh, wow.
So I figured it out, and he killed me. I was like, okay, because I ran out of stamina. I'm like, okay, I got it. Then I went back in, and I realized I could put up I think it's the Kanye. It's a Canje. I don't know how you pronounce Kanye.
Probably close.
But he basically creates these daggers over, and they auto target, and that will also knock him out of his combo. So I put that up first, and I switched to the Greatsword, hit him once, whack, 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 and then he killed me because he just sort of parried me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I went too hard. And then the third time it worked.
Yeah.
So that was how I beat him.
Yeah.
But basically, and the first weapon the game gives you was a giant stone hammer. And it's like the
suggesting
the items this DLC gives you are intentional.
Use them.
Like at one point, I picked up this talisman that was it gave you super defense against magic, like just plain old like the blue magic, right? Standard sorcery. And the next thing I fought was this giant thing that used these huge sorcery sword swings, and you equip that talisman. It's like, oh, I'm taking half the damage I was before. Fine, okay, cool. So listen to what the game is telling you as you find like the purple glowing items. Like they are usually telling you
for a reason.
The other thing to remember, and I don't know how many people really understood, or maybe some people are ignoring this or don't get it because they're so trusting in their build. I'll get into why I think some of this is happening in terms of the people who have been playing this a long time. But you can find this sap and these I can't remember the names of them. But it's a particular kind of sap it's the Old English word for shadow tree. Shadow. I don't know what the fuck it is.
Shade tree, you mean?
No, it's like something like that. It's Old English for shade tree or shadow tree, and that's the sap. And there's like soldiers of fall, whatever, ashes. And when you
This is my problem with their games in general, is just the verbiage that their games use.
And when you go to the Skadu tree, that's it. And when you go to a Site of Grace, you can power up. So the sap, you can power up a offense, and the ashes power up your defense.
Yeah.
And it works like the flats. Like it takes 1 the first time, and then it takes 2 for a few times, and then it takes 3 for the next few. Like that kind of thing. And what it does is it very significantly powers up your attack and defense stats, but it only works in the DLC.
No.
So if you go back to the main map of the main game, all that bonus will be gone.
That's weird.
And then it's the deal with the fact that you're basically hitting the soft level cap by the time you're getting to this DLC.
Yeah.
It's a way to like not have to. You can still progress and become more powerful, but outside of the leveling system, which is already kind of maxed out by the main game.
Right.
And then so when you go back in the DLC, you get your stat bonus back, obviously. So you have to be constantly doing that to stay competitive as you move through the DLC, because it does get harder. But otherwise, like, I'm a pretty.
Look at this magic attack.
Don't mess with holy damage. Holy damage will kill everything.
He literally just killed like 20 dudes with one spell.
I'll do that with I have the Glintstone Arc, and I can just or the Moonlight Sword also does that. You can power up that thing. It's my rock fall, my rock blast thing. I just throwing 3 rocks at things is how I've won so many ridiculous amounts of things in this game. That spell isn't as useful in the DLC because it's too slow. One thing that's notable about the DLC enemies is they are all fast.
No, like I've seen it just by watching the B-roll.
From really was like, okay, we cut your break on the main game. Now we realize that you can react to these things more efficiently. So everybody is going to basically be the Flash.
Yeah.
They will close the distance, like whether you like it or not.
I watched a lot of footage of this game, and it's so many times like. Before I would have even reacted, an enemy was on the person playing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that happens a lot in this. Like, I think you saw me get ambushed like 3 times just while we were downstairs.
And it was in like 20 minutes. Yeah.
The one thing that does annoy me about this is the other thing that they've done is they've calculated, I believe, exactly the size of an arena for a boss fight that is just small enough to be fucking infuriating. Like, you're fighting a lot.
I feel like these games are designed period like that.
You fight a lot of things in small spaces in this, in small rooms. I'd say at least half the deaths in the DLC for me have been because I was backed up against some like the wall or some like feature of the area and I couldn't see it because Revered Spirit Ash, that's the thing that boosts your defense.
Yeah.
Like I was just trying to roll out of the way and I got caught on something and I couldn't see against a wall because the room was so small and like I got I am constantly unable to see what I'm trying to do in the DLC, and that was not true in the main game.
Interesting.
Very few camera complaints in the main game. I constantly feel like I can't see what I'm trying to do in the DLC.
Wow.
And that to me,
I wonder why that is.
I think it's because they are putting all this stuff in an intentionally smaller room. Like the guy I just fought, the boss I just fought, he's in a pretty large room. It's a cavern. It's at the bottom of like a mine or a cave or jail, whatever. But like it's just narrow enough that I can't dodge roll the same way to get away from all 5 of his swings.
You eventually
I will
run
hit
into
the
a
wall, and I might hit some kind of and like
Wow.
it doesn't stop the dodge roll, and you don't lose the iframe, so he won't hit you. But you haven't moved away from him enough to recover in time to require him to turn to match you, and then you lose those like 30 frames. That
Which
it
are
means
the
difference between getting back to those iframes and the next dodge roll and him hitting you and killing you.
Yeah.
And that is not a fun way to lose.
I don't find losing in these games fun at all.
Yeah, but there's fair losing and there's bullshit losing.
I understand.
And there's a lot of bullshit losing in the DLC.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. I already feel like there's a lot of bullshit losing in the base game.
And I think a lot of what from what I've seen and read the kind of the reactions and the people that got mad about, I mean, some of this is because this DLC is sort of forcing you to relearn things. Not relearn things, but like it's approaching things very differently. And your strategies and what you've spent in some cases, hundreds of hours playing and doing are not going to solve the problem for you. And some people seem to be there's certain players of a certain ilk, not saying who, seem to take the idea that, oh, everything you used before, everything you knew before now has to be readjusted, or we've analyzed that, we're gonna do this differently and kind of short circuit your strategy. They don't take that as a new challenge. They take that as an insult.
No.
It's like they were corrected. And they get very angry about that. And that's part of it, I think. Also, if you really don't like big smashy weapons, you're going to be kind of forced to use them to survive in this, and some people are not happy about that. Which I kind of understand but also like my strategy in this has just been to brute forcedly refuse to switch my because the magic build is still working pretty well. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming, and there's a lot more memorization involved because basically when I hit a new boss, what I'm going to have to do, instead of being able to adjust to what's happening like a lot of the melee builds can, I basically have to memorize their attack patterns so I can dodge them properly. And so that's going to take longer. But it's just what I liked. It's like I like to play these games as mages. That's just how it is. It's one of the reasons Dark Souls 2 is what clicked for me, because it was the first game in the series in between Demon Souls and Dark Souls 1 is the first game to make magic a viable main strategy, because the way the mana worked was functional, whereas it wasn't like cast the spell once and you lose it.
Yeah.
It became cast whatever your mana bar lets you use. And so then magic became a viable. Magic's always been easy mode to some degree. The magic character, I can't remember the name of the build.
I think the early going's a little more difficult though, right?
Sometimes, but like even in Demon Souls, if you pick the one character that starts with the magic stuff, I can't remember the name of the starting class for that. You've got because like basically you'll hit a point. You can't just spam magic with that character early on, but you do have the ability to basically one shot like 10 guys if you need to. You know, you don't feel like fighting this guy around the corner. Bing, done.
Right.
You know, that's kind of like what the advantage was there.
Do you think these players understand and recognize the irony of them complaining about the difficulty of the game?
Probably not. I don't know if you've noticed, but irony and gamers and their behavior doesn't really click with most of these people. This thing also surprised me. This thing, most giant enemies, like they kind of look like scenery in Elden Ring, leave you alone.
Unless you
get real close.
Yeah.
Or mess with them.
Yep.
This guy will start fucking with you like a mile out.
Oh, really?
Like I was off on the other side of the map, and suddenly I was getting hit by like fireballs. I'm like, where the fuck is that coming from? Like,
it was that guy.
It was that guy from like half a mile away. And then he chased me all the way. I mean, he killed me.
Wow.
I tried to run away from him and I couldn't get away from him.
Wow.
Like he kept hitting
me.
me.
And he's just roaming the open world.
Yeah, I never got close enough for that to happen again because I learned my fucking lesson. That's what From games are. Did you learn your fucking lesson?
Yeah, that's really what it is. Yeah.
But yeah, that wasn't, again, there's like I said, there's a lot of subversion of expectations in this game compared to what you expect from Elden Ring. You expect a site of grace to be a certain distance away. It is not.
Yeah.
You expect there to be an ambush in this particular place. There is not. The ambush is from over here. You expect that this is going to.
Well, how about that guy who just ran out from underneath the waterfall?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that drives me crazy about these games. It's like you're just walking up to a waterfall, maybe looking at it because it's pretty, and some dude comes out and just.
Well, the good news is he does that every time, so now you're ready.
Right. Yeah. Well, you learned your lesson. You learned your lesson, like you said. It's
And this guy's cool. This is the lion boss guy. Tough. I mean, definitely not a joke, especially if you got to be up close to him.
Yeah. And what's the guy, the lead developer on this series?
Oh, Miyazaki.
Yeah, he just said this week that he doesn't think he'll ever include difficulty settings in his games because it would break his game.
Yeah, well, he got a little artistic about it, which I think is funny because like you've got these two. I feel like it's like I would love to stage some kind of weird debate between him and Kojima because Kojima does not think video games are art.
Like any video game?
No.
Really?
He says art is how you make them. Like they are expression. You can use art to then put all that together, and that's how the video game gets made. But he's like, art is something that communicates something to a single person from the artist. And like if you're walking by like a painting and something catches your eye and you're like, oh, what's that? And like there's a moment of connection between you and the artist. But he believes that video games are made by such huge teams, so many people, and there's no clear message. So he believes that art is like the components of video games are art, but the end result of the game is a service. And it's meant to appeal to as many people as possible, and that's not what art does. Whereas Miyazaki clearly believes that what he makes is art, and to add difficulty settings would compromise that art because that's not what he's trying to communicate with these games.
Right.
And I just think it would be fascinating to see him and Kojima go at it over that. Like that,
debate it.
Because those are two extremely different philosophies from two, I would argue, pretty equally respected people in the game development world, and it's just fascinating to me that
they're polar opposites.
That they're so polar opposite. And I always, I'm not a huge Kojima fan, but I have always found it interesting that he has such a dim view of the medium he works in.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with him in some ways, not because of necessarily exactly what he says, but I think games are so temporal that it's very hard for me to argue that Metal Gear 1 is art. Because no one playing it today is going to get anything close out of it that we did when we played it in 1988 or whatever.
They are of a time, for sure.
Whereas if you watch like Fritz Lang's Metropolis, obviously the effects are not on the level, but you're going to basically experience what someone in 1930 whatever that came out. I don't remember what year that was.
I mean, your perspective does change.
Perspectives change, but the experience of the work doesn't really change. And the fact that like it's like looking at a movie hasn't changed in 100 years. Looking at a painting hasn't changed in 100 years. Interacting with a video game does change.
On a yearly basis almost.
To the point that like playing Demon's Souls is not the same thing as playing Elden Ring specifically because of that.
Yeah.
And that makes it very hard to argue for the art thing without it being incredibly basically you're talking about it being the equivalent of art of like that modern art thing where people splash things on the thing and like maybe something strikes you in the moment of the context of the time and the art gallery you're in with the people you're with that you're like,
and the wine that you're drinking,
maybe that is that not art? No, I mean, but it's a different thing than like Monet's water lilies, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And so maybe that's the distinction that needs to be made. And I wonder if Kojima and Miyazaki would come to that, if Miyazaki would just eventually start pounding him with a shovel. I feel like either thing is possible. Like,
could go either way.
Those are my two dream like Japan creator debates would be Miyazaki versus Kojima and Miyazaki versus Hayao Miyazaki. Versus the Ghibli, because those are two the two Miyazakis are like. Because the Miyazaki, whose name I can never remember his first name, the Dark Souls guy, From Software guy. The thing is, like, he makes these dark, horrible, monstrous things, and he's the most cheerful fucking dude
he really
you've
is,
ever seen. And Hayao Miyazaki makes the most upbeat, cheerful, beautiful anime films, and he's the darkest human being you're ever gonna. He's just sitting there smoking. He's like, anime was a mistake. All AI is an affront to human life itself. It's like this guy guy made Totoro? Like, what the heck? But it's just like, I'd love to have those two guys in a room just to see Miyazaki versus Miyazaki.
Yeah. What do you think about the story in this? I know that these games... Exactly.
I know.
I was about to say, I know generally the stories are the driving force behind these games, but is it different this time?
No, I mean, I would say the story is more story forward than most of these games. Like, there is a cutscene that explains some things. The characters kind of talk about, because
do they talk in the cutscenes?
No, yeah, a little. I mean,
do they?
The boss you fight to get into the DLC does. Which I hadn't beaten, it turned out, like, because I knew I'd beaten Star Scourge Radon or whatever his name was, because he's a story boss, and I knew I'd beaten Moog, but it turns out there's two Moogs, and I hadn't beaten the second one.
So you still had to do some of the preconditions.
Well, yeah, because last week I went to the place where the orb was that you used to get into the DLC just to see if it was there, and it was. But then a cutscene started with Moog, Lord of Blood or whatever, like talking to the dead orb thing, and then turned around and fights him. I was like, what the fuck is it? So I beat him. And then I'd beaten the other boss you had to do. I mean, look, I would have found him anyway. He's optional, and I'd beaten the first version. I just never went back there because it's a dead end unless the DLC's in place.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And now I just went back. I'm gonna go see the orb again. It's like, what the fuck? He's much harder the second time. So that was a little different. And I hadn't played the game in like a year. So I was like, I don't even remember what fucking dodge is. What are you doing?
I saw people on Facebook, some of our colleagues, saying that they had forgotten everything, like how to summon the horse, and they had to relearn the whole game.
I forgot how to do like how to get off the horse. So I was like, I don't know, what is it?
And having to do learn the basics again in a game like this is completely different than a lot of other games. So the story's a little more overt, but do you know what the hell's going on?
Well, so you're in the realm of shadow, which seems to be because there's Mikola is the lord that's sort of involved, that like the people that are on your side are kind of, I guess there's 3 different story arcs you can side with depending on whose group you go with, but initially you're kind of following the path of Mikola, and the first main thing you're assigned to do is like there's these crosses, the cross of Mikola's crosses, which are these things you can interact with, and there's a little story snippet, and this big cross appears, and they appear on the map, and you have to find all of them. I don't remember how many. I think there's 8 or something. I don't remember. We have to find all of them to open the way to the kind of the second part of the DLC map. And there's a guy you meet early on who gives you a map that shows where a bunch of them are. And so basically, like, once you beat that lion guy, you get to you up this like big staircase, and there's a thing that basically says like, oh, this is blocked off by the shadow, and the only thing that can beat the shadow is the light of Mikola. So you're like, okay, I gotta go find all the fucking crosses. Great.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where you kind of do the Elden Ring thing where you sort of wander around and
finding the things that you need.
Go places you haven't been yet and see what happens. Oh, there's a cross.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a cool. Oh, I guess this is a boss. Okay, well, I guess we'll do this. Yeah. It's not as
sounds maybe a little more freeform than
it is in the sense that like there isn't like the difficulty curve isn't as steep, I would argue, because you're gonna be kind of the same most places. Other than, you get obviously there's a difference when you upgrade with the ashes and the sap, but everything's about the same except that one boss I found in this little tomb that's about the size of this room, and I cannot fucking do it. He's like a little knight guy. And I can't do it.
Not enough room to roll away.
Not enough room to get away from him. Like there's no room to cast the fucking spells. I don't know what to do. Otherwise, just sort of been kind of steadily marching through it. And I got to admit, like I'm just sort of it's fine. Like
yeah. Are you gonna keep playing it? Do you think?
I think I'd rather play Beyond Good and Evil
right
now.
Certainly a completely different experience.
Yeah, like it's fine. Like, there's not much else to play this summer, really. Yeah. So maybe I'll keep playing it periodically, go back to it until Star Wars comes out or something. I don't know. Yeah. But it's just sort of more,
Yeah. And not as challenging as people are making it out to be, you don't think?
I mean, not for my build, I don't think. But I don't play the way... And again, there's people that would say that playing a distance magic build is cheating, and you're, like, not really playing the game.
Oh, whatever, man.
Like, if you didn't
if he puts it in a game, you can use it.
You didn't beat something with a shield and sword and no summons and all.
You're not a real player.
Yeah, it's like, so I don't fucking care. Like,
I don't either. I don't care about any of that crap.
And also, I don't have the patience. So far, I've had pretty good luck just fighting the various bosses I've run into, but like the guy in the little tiny room, I fought him like 10 times and left. You know, I'm just like, I don't care.
Moving on.
Like I don't have, you know, this is also film festival week for me, and like I don't care about. I don't have the time or the interest to throw myself against the same boss 14, 15, 20, 30 times. There's one streamer that says he'd been on the final boss of the DLC for 50 hours. He died 1,000 times. I'm like, I can't. No, there's no.
There's no point in my life where that is
and
a
I
good
don't
use
care.
of my
Like people
time.
are like, oh well, you got to throw yourself against the boss all the time because that's how you get the sense of accomplishment when you beat him.
Not worth it.
I'm like, you know what the sense of accomplishment for me is? Premiering a short film at the film festival this Friday.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get that from a video game boss. I'm sorry. Like, I don't. You know, if you do, great, but like that's not of interest to me.
I don't think most people. It's not a good use of your time. You think about the other things you can do in that amount of time. The amount of victory I feel defeating that boss is never going to overcome all the things I could have accomplished otherwise.
And it just makes me think, you know, and part of this is the tone of the game. Maybe Miyazaki wants me to think about this, but I'm just sitting there. I'm just like, on my 10th or 12th or 15th run, I'm just sort of like, most of my life is over at this point, right? Like statistically, I have like maybe 40 years left, right?
Yeah,
and I'm doing this.
Well, that's if you're living good. You got 40 left. Yeah,
I'm not. So like, I'm just like, I don't like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like,
This
is a young man's game.
It is. I've been saying that about these games for a long time. It's like I get to a certain point and I'm like, I'm not having fun doing this anymore. Like I'm just like praying that I can just get past it to move forward. And it's like it's not. And when I do finally beat it, it's not a sense of accomplishment. It's a sense of relief. I'm like, thank God I don't have to do that again.
I do think a lot of people confuse those two things.
I think they do,
especially in this economy.
Yeah.
But like, there's also the element of like, I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that I could finish this DLC.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But
do you want to?
What?
Yeah.
What? Just to say I did it? Because I'll tell you this much.
Because for a lot of people, that's what matters.
I'm not going to fucking understand what the fucking ending is. Because I don't know what the hell's going on. Yeah. Earlier when you were downstairs, I explained to you the mythos behind, like the story, the lore behind the pot things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know why I know that.
Which is insane.
It's not in the game. Yeah. I didn't find it in the game. I read it in some fucking post somewhere, a tweet or something. I don't know. Right. I didn't get that out of playing the game.
You're like, where did I get that information from? Yeah. That's just a part of playing these games is you go online and you talk to people about it and you
read they read the scrap of information on the back of a sword that they picked up once and that told them that. It's like, I don't...
Yeah.
I'm not here to... I'm not playing treasure hunt with this shit. Because it's like, when you piece it all together, because like I did that, like I watched like kind of a, you know, the whole Dark Souls story sort of like laid out thing. It's real dumb. It's just a bunch of ancient kings and sad people and magic people. Like, we opened the dark thing, and now the dark thing's in the king's evil, and the king's evil, the whole planet's evil. So like, now everything's dead, and now you're back. Oh, but all the dead things are back because you're dead. It's like, okay, well, shut up.
This is how I felt about these games all along.
Yeah, but I never played them for a story.
Right.
I was like, I thought they were an interesting mechanical challenge, and I feel like I've just kind of.
I mean, you've climbed that mountain. It's like asking you to climb Everest a third time.
Yeah. And the only game in the From lineup that really still engages me in a gameplay way is Sekiro.
I think a lot of people feel that way
because it's a different, it's feels more like an action game. It's a like I do feel really good when I parry the boss's entire attack string and then hit him with the fucking stab him and he twists the sword and knocks him off. And it's like
it does feel good. Yeah.
Like, but also that's more my style of game. That's more of a fighting game.
Well, before Elden Ring, that was the From Software game I had made the furthest headway in before Elden Ring. So.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me because it is the closest to something that's
typical
more recognizable.
Character action game.
Yeah. And I really like it. It's still my favorite one.
I wonder what do you guys think? Are you guys playing it? Userfriendly.exe says, he's talking about your stuff with the Kojima. I agree with Kojima on his stance on art in video games. Art is something you witness and experience. Games are something you engage with and take a part in and control. I felt it tends to be the difference. Games could be more engaging, so not sure why developers feel the need to be labeled art. It can be a superior experience if done well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of that. One of the reasons you want labeled art is so you don't get censored.
Yeah.
Like with a big drive on that, especially in the 90s, was like you can't...
You do get a pass if it's art.
You can't make laws prohibiting Mortal Kombat from being made if it's art.
Right.
So that's part of the reason, like it's a protection thing.
Yeah.
But I do pretty much agree with, there's more comparison to be derived from in sports to some degree. And it's not like there can't be art in sports. There's drama and there's artistry and there's all that. There's beauty in it.
Here's a good example. So there's this new hockey player. He's like the best player in the world. His name's Connor McDavid, and he's really good. He, he puts up more points than everybody, and he's not a big goal scorer. He's really good with assists, but he's really fast, and like he's breaking all these records. He just lost last night. He lost the cup in Game 7, and he still won the MVP award for the playoffs, even though he lost and didn't even win the cup. So anyway, he's really good, and he puts up points, but I don't like watching him play. If you watch him play, he's very herky-jerky. He skates really fast, but his legs are going like a million miles an hour, and there's no artistry to the way he plays the game. Like all the all-time greats before, you watch him play, there's something about the way they stride when they skate and the way that they time when they do their stride. This guy is just like a jitterbug, and it's not enjoyment. I don't enjoy watching him play hockey, and I love hockey. I love watching the greats play hockey. Even I can go back and watch like clips from like the 50s, and the best players from then, they have that same aesthetic as great players from today. And he's this anomaly. He's really good. He can score. He's got good hands. He can pass accurately. I just don't like watching him play. And so even in sport, there is an artistry to how people play. Gale Sayers in the NFL is a running back. He only played like 5 or 6 years. He still made it to the Hall of Fame because when you watch him run the ball, he ran unlike anybody. He would glide down the field. And again, there is something to it. There's an aesthetic to, and I think you can find it in almost anything if you look in the right places. There is an art to almost anything, I believe.
I always think of the 30 for 30 called The Best That Never Was. And one of the guys I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but he's a receiver. He's a player, football player, but and he was the best in high school. No one had ever seen anything like him. And college, and in college he was in, and then he dropped out of college to be a pro and got injured immediately and never played again. And they go back to him, and they at the end of it, I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but he drives tractors now, and so his knee doesn't work still properly. But they dug up for the documentary. They dug up footage of him in high school that had been lost before, and it's like he's running at a different clock speed as at every other human being on the field. It's like it doesn't look real, and they show it to him, and he's like, "Oh, I haven't seen this in forever," and he's like, "I was something, wasn't I?" It was just like awesome. It was like but you're looking at it, it's like that thing where it's like that is like nothing you've ever seen. Like how is someone covering that much distance? And there's an element of that to watching someone who's really good at like Elden Ring play the game.
That's true.
Like just sort of striding through stuff.
I mean, even when I watch you play it, like it's different than watching footage of me play the game. Like you have an understanding of how the flow of it, how it works, how the enemies work. I feel like you're fighting with the game while I'm always fighting against the game. There's a difference. I can watch you play it. It's different than watching me play the game. So there's definitely an artistry to how you play games. And I would argue, for the most part, in how you make games, but I do think it's different from other art forms for sure.
Yeah, I think it's close enough that we can consider it speech in that regard. I mean, I think art goes into the making of a game, whether you think the final product is art one way or the other. I think it's still speech. Like, I think you can't mess with that, really. Yeah. But I think the temporality of it and the engagement of it is so different.
It makes it unique, for sure. So should people buy this DLC, Matt? It's $40, right?
Yeah, it's maybe it's 50.
Is it 50?
Maybe it's a deluxe version or something. I can't remember. I thought I paid 50. I might be right. I bought it a while ago. Yeah. The other thing, I was hard to get it to work on Xbox.
There's technical hiccups,
right? Yeah, because it went live at like 9, I think, our time, and so I loaded it in, and I couldn't interact with the orb thing, and I'm like, I know I beat the boss. I have his fucking head in my inventory. I know I killed him. Like, and so I went looking around, and I went on the store thing, and it's like, I'm like, did it update? Yes, it's up to date. Do I need to install it? And the store's like, no, you don't need to install this thing. And I went to the add-ons page, and it's like, no, you have to install it. And I'm like, why doesn't this work? And finally, I figured out you do have to install it. I had to go to the main menu of the actual game, go to Microsoft Store. And then it would pop up a store page that did have an installation option. Oh, geez. And then I installed it from there. It was like 18 gigs, so I had to wait around for that to happen. Yeah. And then I could play it. I'm like, I don't know why the Microsoft Store and all these... I assume that was just an Xbox thing. Yeah, I don't know why the Microsoft Store was telling me I don't need to install the DLC when clearly I did. Yeah. And the only way to install it was to go through the menu of the actual game. I found that very weird.
That is weird. Yeah.
Because if I'd known that, I would have installed it sooner. So then I could have played it. So I'm sitting there waiting while the game's live. It was annoying.
I mean, it sounds like $40 or $50 for 30 hours of new content. That seems like a pretty good deal.
As long as you're ready to, unlearn what you've learned to some degree, especially if you're like a standard melee fighter, like you're gonna have to. These guys are fast. They are strong. They're gonna kill you in, they kill me in like 3 hits. They're probably gonna kill the average like melee build in double that or a little more, but still you're gonna die way faster than you did in the vanilla game. If you're gonna go in on this as a close-up fighter, I would say don't attempt this DLC without 50 vigor. Okay. Or more. I would say 60 would be close. You need the hit points to tank some of these hits, just because of how much memorization you're going to need.
Yep.
So yeah, not a pushover. It's probably not as hard as the old Hunters. I think that's still
the high bar.
I think that's still the pinnacle of,
or the low bar, depending on your perspective.
That's the pinnacle of From Software cruelty in DLC. I think. But if you just want more Elden Ring that realizes that you've been playing this game for 100 some hours, and it does. It knows it's not your first day on the job. As long as you're ready for that, then yeah, I would say it's a must buy if you want more Elden Ring or want more From Software in general.
Okay.
And if you want more From Software, I don't know why you wouldn't want more Elden Ring. I don't really want more Elden Ring. It turns out I feel like I've done enough. But it's not. I don't dislike it. I don't. I kind of feel like I've done it.
Hey everyone, just want to let you know that unfortunately the stream went down here. We're having problems with the internet, so we're actually going to finish the show offline, which means unfortunately we won't be able to play Name That Game with you guys for this episode, but we'll have it back in next week's episode. But just to finish off with Elden Ring, Matt, $40,
yeah,
worth it.
I would say, unless you're afraid of change, I guess.
Which a lot of people are. Yeah. Let's be honest. That's just the way it is. So there you go. That's Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. Matt says pick it up if you're a fan. He also says it's not as difficult as people are making it out to be, as long as you're flexible mentally, right?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, if you can handle the rest of the game, you can handle this. It's harder than the rest of the game, but I mean, if you got that far, I don't see an issue. I don't think you'll be. I think most people will be able to adjust once they realize what the game's doing. And what the game is doing is kind of mean.
Yeah.
That's From Software DLC for you. Like a
lot of people I think are discovering it for the first time.
They take everything that they learned about how people play and how people exploit things and how people get around things in the game, and they make a DLC custom built to short circuit all of that.
Yeah.
That's how they've always done it.
Okay.
So as long as you're prepared for that,
dive in.
Go for it.
Have fun. No thanks. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about a game that I've been playing actually for a long time, Matt. This game came out like right before Naughty 3 started, and once Naughty 3 started, there's no way we're going to cover it. Mm-hmm. The good news is I've kind of continued to play it since then. At first, I played it a lot. I'm starting to wane now, and now I'm to the point actually where I don't really play it that much anymore. But that game is Star Wars Hunters. It is a free-to-play, multiplayer-based shooter set in the Star Wars universe. And I would just say, after spending a lot of time with it, the Star Wars part I use a little loosely. Mm-hmm. It is, I think if people go into this shooter being like, I want to play as Han, or I want to play as Luke, or I want to play as Leia, or even if you want to play as some of the more rote characters or the more rank and file characters from the Star Wars universe, you don't get that here. Instead, the characters are kind of like, I guess the best way I could describe it are races, but they're not all races. So there's Wookiees and there's Jawas, but then there's also like Stormtroopers. It's like one of the races. But you don't have specific character names. So there's no Chewbacca. There's just a Wookiee that you play as. Mm-hmm. And for most people, the generic Wookiee is probably good enough. But I think for like the Jedi and some of the other more distinguished characters, I think that it won't be good enough. Now, despite all that, I think otherwise the game does a pretty good job of representing the Star Wars license. It's mixed though. Like, for example, like some of the cool stuff is like the maps. The maps are very small, which encourages a lot of consistent confrontation. And the coolest things about them, Star Wars-wise, is there are like interactive elements. So there's some maps where you start out and like some of the ships that are famous from the Star Wars universe will fly across the map. There's also some cool elements in this map where there's like moving trains, and so if somebody gets knocked onto the tracks and they get run over, it actually will kill them. And there aren't really shooters like that anymore. In fact, Matt, that's probably the best way I could describe this game in general, is that they just don't make shooters like that anymore. It is 4-on-4, and that may not seem like enough players. Most shooters are 6-on-6, but again, they've designed the maps with those 4 players in mind, and believe me, 4 players is plenty on these maps. There's no doubt about it. So it is free to play. I'll get into some of the free to play like monetization stuff in a little bit. It is only available for Switch and mobile, so Switch and iOS and Android, and there is cross-play between all those platforms. And I'll say this, you realize very quickly when you're in a match with a bunch of people playing on mobile, because if you're playing on Switch with a controller, you just annihilate them. I mean, literally finish with like 14 kills and 2 deaths type like annihilation. The matchmaking in this leaves a little bit to be desired, I would argue. But yeah, you do notice very quickly how many mobile players are in each match with you. Now, one thing I like about this, and I wish more games did it, is that each character plays completely differently. There's no, other than the ability to walk through the maps or run through the maps and jump, there's nothing that the characters share. So you can't even aim down the sights with every character. That is a special ability that is only given to certain characters in the game. So there's no crouching, there's no going prone. You can basically jump and run as your base abilities, and then the character that you choose affects the other stuff that you're able to do. And I like that, actually. Like, I like that it matters, like, what character you pick in this. Like, most shooters, the character doesn't matter. It's the guns or the weapons that change. In this, everything changes from character to character, which I think is pretty cool. And then there are, like, some nice nuances to the way each character plays. So one character has, like, a grapple hook. And the game doesn't have that much verticality. So when I first started playing as that character, I was like, what's the point of this grapple hook? Because the other thing is that there's other things in the game to help you get around. So there's like zip lines, so you can zip line up or you can zip line across. There's jump pads in some of the maps that will like literally just bound you up to some. So you're like, wait a minute, why do I need this grapple hook? Well, once you start using it, you realize if you grapple and you land up on a platform, you go into like this frenzy mode. So as soon as you realize that, you're like, well, crap, I'm going to use a grapple hook every chance I get. And that's exactly what you start doing with that character once you start to understand it. And every character in the game is like that. They have some little unique quirk or something that seems a little goofy at first. Then you start to learn and realize how it was built and why it was built, and you start to get better with it. So I like, based generally, how the characters are handled in this, regardless of the fact that you're not seeing a lot of recognizable faces from the Star Wars universe that you're used to seeing in the films. So if you can get over that, that this is one of the Star Wars games that's not really slathered in Star Wars juice. I don't know if that's the right decision. Like, Matt, would you be happier if, like, it had real Star Wars characters in it? No. Instead of these kind of faceless, nameless?
No.
No?
The issue isn't the characters. The issue is that I don't give a shit about an arena combat game with Star Wars in it. I didn't care when it was that Demolition game on Dreamcast. I don't care now.
I forgot about that Demolition game.
That's what this reminds me of the most, is like a bunch of randos that are sort of reminiscent of things you recognize, and Boba Fett. And that's kind of, it was just silly.
Yeah. And it is one of those games where you have like your basic shooting ability, and then you have like 2 special abilities, and you just saw right there, I pulled off my super. And the super is completely different for each character. Like you saw there, this character fires off missiles, but like the Wookiee does this crazy like rolling boulder attack, and the boulder will roll around the map for a good like minute, just destroying anything that it runs into. Again, I love how the Jawas are just like two guys standing on top of each other under a trench coat. There's some charm to this game for sure. I personally wish that there were real Star Wars characters in this. I know it doesn't affect your enjoyment of it, but you could have done this with the real Star Wars characters. Why would they not do that, Matt? You know how the licenses work.
Because everything is canon. Everything that gets put out is some form of canon.
Gotcha.
And Han and all those guys did not fight in a random arena for a year.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Okay.
If you want to play something like that, you got Battlefront, basically.
But how do they get away with it with Battlefront if they can't do it here?
Those are all technically reenacting actual things that happened.
That's a good point, actually. They are. That's true. Okay. I still would like to see it. I would be okay if they broke the rules for this, Matt. I know you probably wouldn't be, but
yeah, I don't really care.
No,
it's either way, it doesn't really matter. I mean, this is actually, I think this is probably the better way. Actually, and I think the better way to do it would actually have been to let you customize these guys more.
Yeah. So there is customization because it is a free-to-play game. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of customization.
I think it would have been better to let people pick the class and let them design the character.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to be a Wookiee, which basically gives you the same abilities or whatever. But now I get to pick from a bunch of different Wookiee heads and different colors and different. I'm sure that customization's in there somewhere.
It's really not actually. Like they'll let you customize the color. Like you can get skins for your gun. You can get you can't really get it's not like League of Legends where you get a skin and it transforms your character and gives them a new special or a new ability. It will just change the color of their petticoat. It's very subtle. Like to me, the hooks for the free-to-play stuff in here, which is basically because how free-to-play works is we're going to get money out of you because you want to customize your character with these cool cosmetics. I do not see the draw for it in this at all. In fact, after having played this game for 20-some hours, I don't like the characters that I have now any more than the starting characters that I had. I never came across some awesome skin that changed the way things work or drastically changed the way my character looked. Now, there are some, examples where they'll take the helmet off sometimes and you'll be able to see the character's face with a different skin, but for the most part they all look the same no matter how deep you get and no matter how many cosmetics you've been unlocking. The modes are typical. There's team deathmatch, there's 2 different control variants. You don't get to pick which modes you want to play, which I found, again, it's like old games are like that. New shooters, you can choose, in Call of Duty, if you want to just play one mode, and I generally do, I just play team deathmatch for the most part.
You can really tell who's on mobile in this one.
Oh, man. Yeah, because they can't look around as fast.
They have no situational awareness.
Nope. They don't have surround sound telling them where people are shooting
on that
from.
last match, you had 600-something points and the second place at 110.
Right. Yeah. Well, here's the other thing, Matt. The characters are not well balanced either. So the Stormtrooper is called the Sentinel in this. Mm-hmm. He is so OP. It is ridiculous because he has a shield. He has the most powerful weapon. It also fires faster than any other weapon in the game. He also, his special, he calls down 2 other Stormtroopers to fight alongside him. His special also powers up way more quickly than a lot of the other specials in the game. This character is in every match because he will dominate the match. You can, in the control points, if you park him, you see how there's pads around the game. Some of them will give you buffs, elemental buffs. Some are just a health pad. And with this character, if you're playing one of the control variants and you just park him next to one of the control points, right next to one of the health things.
Did they get 0 points?
Maybe.
You just shut out? Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you did.
No, they had no kills.
No kills.
Yep. So there's some balancing that needs to be handled in this game for sure. And I'm sure over time they'll start to figure it out. But I don't know how they play tested the Sentinel and weren't okay, this dude is way out of bounds. I got tired of playing with him because it was just too easy. Once you get used to the shield too, it'll last forever.
It seems crazy that there's melee characters in a game with that guy.
The Sentinel's a melee character. So people get smart and they're okay, I'm just going to come up and rush you. That doesn't matter. He has an attack where he melees and knocks people down. And you just kill him. Once you knock him down and unload with that machine gun, it just kills him. He also has an attack that literally knocks people down. That's all it does. It's just it's a burst fire that just literally knocks people down. So they definitely have some balancing things that they need to work on.
If he'd been that effective in Jedi Survivor, it might have turned out differently.
That's true. Yep. What else? So the modes are very generic. They're typical shooter modes. You got team deathmatch. You got points where you're there's one where the point moves around the map. There's one where there's 3 different points, basically domination, which is in every frickin' shooter ever. There's not a lot of creativity in the maps at all. Now, what you're starting to see here is a little bit of the free-to-play stuff. It's almost overwhelming, Matt. When you finish a match and you go to the main screen, there are 80 things that are all going on. It can be very confusing. And there's 2 main currencies, but it feels like there's way more. So you have one currency that unlocks all the cosmetic stuff. Then you have the other currency that you use to unlock the new characters. Now, the first 5 or 6 hours of playing this game, the unlocks are cool. You're like, okay, I can play for like 45 minutes and I'll unlock a new character. Once you get past that 5-hour mark, they just start stretching the distance between unlocking each new character to where it gets to the point where you got to play for hours to unlock the new guys. And then there's this other currency you get called like renown or something like that, and you can go and spend it on specific characters to increase their renown or whatever, and then that gives them actual new abilities that also can unbalance the game, because you'll get like an upgraded shield for the Sentinel, meaning that it'll last longer, or it can deflect more bullets. Some of the characters, as you level them up with the renown, it will increase the damage of their guns. And so when you first start out in this game, you can be playing against people that have powered up their characters to astronomical levels where they shoot you like once or twice, you die. And that can be very frustrating as well. And the thing is you can't pay to upgrade the abilities of the characters, but you can pay for the characters. And the characters are around $10 a piece, which I guess that's about right for a free-to-play game. I've never bought a character in a free-to-play game, so I guess I don't know exactly how much they normally cost. Even in League of Legends, I would wait until somebody I wanted, because they have like a free rotation in League of Legends. I would just wait until that character that I was really into would come up into the free rotation, and then I would start playing as them. I would never pay for them. So I don't know what the going rate is to unlock characters in a free-to-play shooter, but they're $10 in this game, and that seems a little steep to me. But once you finish a match, it's just like, you can see some of the graphics here. It's just like this smorgasbord of graphics going and things unlocking. And one thing I do like that you can do in this game is there's tons of just like sub-quests going on where it's like, kill 100 enemies with this gun, or defend 50 points or whatever, and you get XP for that helps you unlock a bunch of stuff. But the game does a good job of tracking all that stuff, and it will take you there. So it'll show you like a list of mission objectives, and you're like, oh, I don't even know what that means. If you click on it, it will literally take you straight to a match where you can accomplish that objective like right away. So the game does do a pretty good job of like saying, hey, this is a lot, but we're going to organize it in a way that it will make sense to you, and you can always keep making progression through the game. Again, the unlocks almost became too much after a while. You finish a match, when you start getting good, you get 10 or 15 kills. It was just like, you see meters just going whack, 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 whack. And there were times where like I wasn't even claiming everything. Like you're like, man, that's too much. Play 2 more matches, come back. You're like, there's these 3 other screens that I need to go to that unlock stuff. And the game has a battle pass that I think you can just pay $10 for if you want to get through. And not everything in the battle pass is unlocked for playing for free. Like some of the stuff in the battle pass, like you can skip over it just by playing it, but you won't unlock it unless you pay. So that's a little bit of a compromise that I'm not 100% down with, to be honest with you. But overall, like as far as free-to-play games go, I don't feel like I was getting cheated. There is a little bit of an advantage for players who have played the game a lot, but not people who have spent a lot of money. Oh, and I was talking about renown. It's actually called fame. Fame is is one of the currencies that you earn that you use to unlock new abilities for your players. And that's pretty much it. I think one of my big criticisms, one, is the game doesn't feel great to play. Like you can only really jump and run, but the jumping feels floaty. The clamoring, like climbing up stuff, feels awkward at times. It just, like I said, you can't go prone, you can't crouch. A lot of times you feel like you just get ganged up on. I know in a lot of this B-roll I'm like dominating these matches, but like I was recording this when I first started playing. As other players started getting good, it started getting real. Like I was actually dying and like having matches where I had more deaths than kills and things like that. But like as you start to get better and everyone else starts to get better, your willingness to overlook the shortcomings of the controls starts to wane. Like there's just awkward parts about it. Like the game hasn't been built to help you navigate every part of the environment, I guess is a good way to put it. There are times too, and it's a third-person shooter instead of first-person, where you're up high and you're trying to shoot down, and you can't. The angle you're allowed to shoot isn't extreme enough, and so you have to jump off the platform and go down to the ground to fight him because you just can't get the angles right with the way that the game is built. And like I said, you can kind of cheat a little bit by camping at the health recovery points. And if there's one like right next to a capture point, like you can just sit there and roll. So there's lots of things in this game that are easy fixes, honestly. I mean, they're not things that, it's not like the game is fundamentally broken, but here's the thing. Like, I don't know if they want this game to be made for people like me who play Call of Duty. I think they want it to be a more casual experience for people who are Star Wars fans, maybe like shooters, but not people who are like, well, my KD in Call of Duty is 1.7 or whatever. I don't think that's the audience for this game. And
but isn't that the audience that ends up sticking with something for a really long
Yep.
time?
Yep. It is.
So you're kind of stuck.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe their strategy is, okay, let's make this game for casual noobs at first to get the Star Wars fans in, and then over time, maybe we start injecting some more skill into it. I don't know. But it is a very casual shooter. But I will say this too, Matt. It was kind of refreshing to play something simple for once. Mm-hmm. Whereas, Call of Duty's complicated. The players are really good. You got to be on your game or it's very frustrating to play. Like, you can just kind of, like, let this game wash over you and have fun playing it. Like, I never really cared what my KD was in this game or anything like that. I cared if I won matches, because that seems to be where you get most of the XP that you need to unlock the battle pass and unlock the new characters and things like that. But again, because I don't care that much about the characters in this, the draw to unlock the characters wasn't really there. I just kind of enjoyed playing the game, I guess. I've never really played a Star Wars game like this before. We have Battlefront, but that's more in line with, like, Call of Duty than it is something like this. Like, this is just a fun, friendly Star Wars shooter. And you can see the Jedi. You wonder how they balance the Jedi with people who can, can shoot halfway across the map. They deflect bullets like a mofo. It's almost too much, in all honesty. Not only do they deflect the bullets, they deflect them back at you, and they will damage you. So you have to be very careful. They can also do it for a really long time. It's like you're waiting them out to finish their whole move that deflects it, and it just keeps going and going, and next thing you know, they're right on you, and they just slash you with their lightsaber. So I do think they did a pretty good job of balancing the different types of characters in this, as far as, like, you got the guys who can shoot, you got the people who are mostly melee, you got the tanks who can take a lot of damage. I think they need to nerf the Sentinel a good bit. I think they could actually buff the Wookiee. The Wookiee, he doesn't take enough damage, I don't think, before he dies, in all honesty. I think it's too easy to kill him.
I mean, I see him doing his, like, health boost move, but then by the time he's done with the animation, it's gone.
The other thing I would say too is they need to dial down the health boost animation and not make him highlighted, because it makes him stand out like a sore thumb. You can see him, you're like, oh, he's almost dead, or he wouldn't be boosting his health. As soon as I see him doing that, I go after him. I start shooting him in the head, because I'm like, he's almost dead if he's trying to do his health recovery thing. So I had fun playing as the Wookiee, but
every time he does it, he just, like, the health stays steady, but he's in the middle of his animation, so he's not doing anything to help himself.
Right.
So it's
You're a sitting duck, basically.
The end result is 0.
Yep. There's a lot of work like that needs to be done in this game still. But the good news is,
I'm sure there was a period during testing where the Wookiee was, like, the best character in the
probably
game.
And then they overcompensated and nerfed him. But here's the good news, Matt, is that, like, the game is rough in some of those ways, like the balance needs fixed and some stuff like that, but there are so many people playing this game that it's going to get fixed. Literally, there's the matchmaking in this is, like, instantaneous. There are thousands and thousands of people playing this game. So the audience is not going to go away. They're going to have plenty of time to fix and tweak stuff. The other thing I would say, too, is that this is a Switch game where the online functionality is like every other console. Thank God. It's not this weird, like, oh, do you got a friend code and you need to share it and they need to share it with you, and then now you're friends, but you can't find each other because we don't want you to be able to search. This works just like every other shooter. Anyone on your friends list, you can invite them to a game. You can go and look for people that you just played with, that you like playing with, and add them as your friend. It works like every other shooter I've played, and that is not a given on the Switch by any stretch of the imagination. So I've enjoyed this way more than I thought. When I first started playing it, I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to stick with this, because it's very rudimentary and I'm a big shooter player. But it's been kind of refreshing to play something a little more simple and a little more casual, to be honest. Not having to worry about, like, oh, I need to dive through that window and then immediately go prone because there's a dude on the other side of the door. Like, all those calculations that I do in Call of Duty and other shooters kind of fell by the wayside. And I just played this to just have fun. That character, the sniper character, he's too weak. His sniper bullets don't do enough damage. His special is what he probably should be in real life. His special, like, his damage output goes up, and it kind of gets him where he just should be. And here's my biggest complaint with this game, Matt. And I realize some people won't be bothered by this at all, but it bothers the crap out of me. the way you pick characters is it's a race. So the screen comes up, only one person can play as each class in a match. And so it's a race. Like, to get the Sentinel, you better have some fast thumbs, man.
Because, there were 2 Wookiees in that. Is it just the same team, or?
On the same team, yeah. You can fight against them. They can have a Wookiee, but you can't have 2 Wookiees on your team. And so it's like League of Legends. When I used to play League of Legends all the time, like, it was a skill to get a character. Knowing the timing of when the loading screen finished to how long there was a delay until the screen popped up. There's this. So if you are playing in a crappy connection or it's laggy for you, and the menus are a little laggy in this, like they are on almost every freaking Switch game, you're at a disadvantage because other players will be able to pick the good characters. And believe me, there's like 5 good characters, and the rest nobody wants to play with until they do a balanced job. So that is probably the most annoying thing for me. The other thing, too, is you can't back out of a match. So if you're selecting your character and you end up you don't get one of the good characters or a character that you like to play as, you can't quit. You can go to the dashboard of the Switch and just close the game out. That's the only way you can quit. Otherwise, you have to go into the match and play as this character that you don't want to play as. And that's a huge issue for me. I hope that's something that they could change. They should be able to change it pretty easily. But overall, that's probably my biggest gripe. And again, it's free. So feel free to download it on your Switch or on your phone. I would recommend playing it on a phone because there are people playing against you with real controllers on Switch. I think you're at a huge disadvantage in that case. So I don't recommend it, but you can play it on your phone. Some people are good at shooters on their phone. Not me. I never play games on my phone at all. So I've had fun with this. I mean, this game's been out for a couple weeks now. I still wanted to talk about it on GameFace. Because as a shooter player, I enjoyed playing it for its simplicity. And I think as a Star Wars fan, the draw isn't as great as you might expect, but it's still there. Like, there's still elements. Like, the map stuff I think is the coolest. Like, sometimes you just come across a map and, like, a bunch of ships will just fly through. And if you're standing there, they'll kill you when they fly across the map. So they're actually interactive and they're there. So that stuff is really cool. Like, the maps I really liked, and some of the environmental stuff that happens on the maps I like. But I do wish I could select normal Star Wars characters. I think they're taking the canon way too seriously to not include characters like that in this, but that's just my perspective. So
I think they wanted to, I mean, it gives them more freedom to move around. Like, you can put any kind of customization you want on these guys over the course of the game's life, and you don't have to clear every single
that's true.
Piece of
that's a good
you
point.
Put on Luke Skywalker or anything like that, you know.
Different colored lightsabers.
You're not going to be, you're not going to be allowed to probably put, hot pink clothing on Luke Skywalker, or like dress Vader up in rainbow colors or something.
Actually, you're right. Yeah, I didn't think about stuff like that. Yeah. And you know what? I don't want to see a rainbow colored Darth Vader anyway. So maybe ultimately it is for the best. But I was kind of pleasantly surprised by this game. It's better than I thought it was going to be. I've definitely enjoyed it a lot more. I think a factor of that is that it's been a really slow time for game releases. So I've had a little bit of spare time to keep going back to this game and giving it.
Also, this thing's been hovering around, threatening to come out for years. So it's nice to finally be done with it and never have to worry about it again.
Well, the cross-platform is, I'm guessing, was a stumbling block because there's only one other game that does this, where you play console against mobile, and that's Fortnite. It's not easy to do. It's something that a lot of developers have struggled with. And my guess is that's a big reason why this game has been delayed a couple times before it finally came out. So, but I think ultimately they made the right decisions to delay it because it is a passable game that as a Star Wars fan and as a shooter fan, I have enjoyed playing. And so, again, it's free. It's no risk. It's not, I think the client's only like a gig. It's not even like a huge like hard drive sync. So give it a go if you're a Star Wars fan. You may like it. It may end up becoming your daily driver. It was for me for about a week and a half. I feel like I'm waning on it a little bit now. And I think a big part of that, Matt, was that you get to a certain point in this game, the unlocks, you don't really care about them. And the ones that you do care about, you have to play so much to earn that you get to the point where you're like, you know what, maybe I'll just pay $10 for the character. That's when I stopped playing. I was like, okay, I think that's where I'm going to draw the line. So
yeah, also, the Beyond Good and Evil install, 21 gigs.
Wow. Huh. That's kind of surprising.
Yeah, it's bigger than I thought it would be.
Yeah, that's way bigger. I mean, the first game was probably, 2 gigs?
About that,
yeah. That'd be my guess.
I mean, a lot of it's just textures.
Texture size, yep.
4K
it adds
textures.
up. Yep. So there you go. That's Star Wars Hunters. It's free. Give it a go if you're interested. I think I've pretty much given you all the deets that you need to know going into playing it to figure out whether you want to give it a go or not. And again, it's not going to hog up a bunch of space on your hard drive, so don't sweat it. All right. And with that, it's time for our sponsorship with New York Sneaker Society. What's up, everyone? Shane here, and one thing you may not realize about me is that I am a total sneakerhead. That's right. I've been collecting Nike sneakers since the early 90s. My favorites are Air Max 95 and Air Max 97. Now, one thing that's different about me from your typical sneakerhead is that I actually wear the sneakers. And because of that, they can get dirty. And that is where New York Sneaker Society comes in. Using their advanced shoe cleaning products, I turned an old pair of Nikes that looked like this into this. With their cleaning products, your sneaker life can go from a year to 5 or more. I know that. I have shoes that are like 30 years old that I still wear because I've cleaned them. You can also lower your carbon footprint, by keeping your kicks looking fresh. For my daily drivers, I also appreciate New York Sneaker Society's Refresh Spray to keep them smelling great and staying crisp. Head to nysneakersociety.co/sifted to clean your shoes like a pro at home and get 10% off your order. That's right, that's nysneakersociety.co/sifted for 10% off. That's right, people. Go to nysneakersociety.co/sifted and make sure you use that URL because it will get you 15% off your order. It's not that big a deal if you're ordering one of the smaller kits for like $15, but if you're ordering one of the big boys that are going to help you clean up all your shoes, it will add up quickly. 15% is a big chunk. So thank you to New York Sneaker Society for sponsoring. And one fun thing that we do with this sponsorship is we talk about some of the smaller, under-the-radar games from the week that are kind of resonating with you guys. Basically, I'm just going to tell you, I go and look at the stats, our website stats, and I figure out what smaller games you guys are checking out. And this week, I was kind of surprised, Matt, that the game that everybody was into, it's a game called Funko Fusion. It is an action-adventure based upon the Funko figurines. How many do you have, Matt?
0.
You don't own any? Nobody ever sent you one or got you one for Christmas?
Oh, they have, but I get rid of them.
Yeah. What do you do with them?
Give them to people.
Oh, yeah? You don't throw them away?
No.
Yeah. I have one, and that was given to me by my mom in my stocking one year for Christmas. I have not been a collector of them, but they're huge. Like, they became a cottage industry for GameStop, basically. Mm-hmm. I think it may be keeping GameStop alive at this point, these little things. But you guys love them because this was far and away the most popular game that came out of the whole Nintendo Direct as far as the smaller stuff is concerned. You guys watched this and loved it. There wasn't a ton of comments on it on the website, but you guys were checking it out, which leads me to believe that a lot of you guys have collections of these little things at home that you're very happy with. So, yeah.
Either that or the IPs are appealing.
Yeah, and that is the one thing I would say about this. That you're watching this trailer, like, the sky's the limit with this game. Like, there are so many different IP that they can make games and mini games based on. The chances are you're going to find one of your favorites in here. I think they said that this has like 18 at launch or something like that. And then obviously with DLC, this could go on forever. Literally, it could just go on forever. Already you've seen in this trailer, though, there's what, like 6 or 7 different IP in this?
Yeah.
So, and with the IP, you get a lot of different variety with the gameplay and the visuals and things like that. Obviously, always having the figurines art style at heart with the gigantic head and the small bodies. But this is a game that you guys were all checking out after the big Nintendo Direct last week. I got to admit, I was pretty surprised to find that out. There's Five Nights at Freddy's, which is odd. But you can see right there when they just show all the figurines, the opportunity for this is crazy as far as how many different intellectual properties you can squeeze into it. So it is called Funko Fusion. I think they've just announced a release date for it. I think it's coming out here in the next couple months, so not much longer to wait for it. But you guys were excited by it, and so that is why it is our Sneaker of the Week for GameFace episode 392. And with that, we get on to our last game in today's episode, a game called Still Wakes the Deep. It is the next game from the Chinese Room. Matt, do you have a favorite Chinese Room game?
You'll have to remind me which ones those are.
I think Dear Esther is one of them. They basically have always made walking simulators. Mm-hmm. And this one is another walking simulator for the most part. It is a first-person horror adventure that takes place on an oil rig out in the middle of the ocean. You play as an oil rig worker.
I guess I'd say everybody's gone to the Rapture.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people consider that the best walking simulator. That's almost like an oxymoron.
Well, that's probably either that or What Remains of Edith Finch.
Yeah. Yeah, what did I say? Dear Esther?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. What Remains of Edith Finch, yeah.
They didn't make that, though.
Oh, they didn't?
No.
So wait, they made Dear Esther.
They did make Dear Esther.
Okay, so I was right.
But What Remains of Edith Finch would be probably my other pick for best walking simulator.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I see what you're saying now. So this does go a little bit beyond a walking simulator. You play as a worker on an oil rig out in the middle of the ocean, and part of the story is uncovering why you're there. As it turns out, you did something really bad, and you've basically been sent to this oil rig to work off your punishment. You have a wife and kids at home. In fact, that letter that you saw reading there was a letter from your wife where she's basically saying, like, you need to figure it out or we're leaving. You know, I'm leaving you and I'm taking the kids and blah, blah, blah. So you are on this work assignment. I think it's work release or something. Part of it is figuring out what you did that was so terrible that ended up with you on this rig.
Does the character know or not know, or do you not know as a player?
The player doesn't know. The character knows, for sure, yeah. Because he keeps talking about how, the mistake I made, I can't believe I did that, blah, blah, blah. And so that's sort of the subtext for the game. But then the bigger topic of it...
Accidentally summoned Cthulhu.
Well, so what the game starts, and you're walking around the oil rig in, like, the housing part of it. And everyone's like, hey, the boss man wants to see you. The boss man wants to see you. So you go through this little section of the housing area where you talk to some of the main characters from the game. You get to know some people so that you care about them later on when horrible things happen to them. And then eventually you make your way up to the boss's cabin. And the first thing I'm going to say is that I had no idea how big an oil rig was, Matt. Mm-hmm. Do you?
Yeah, like little cities.
They're like a city. Holy moly. How do they build these things in the middle of the ocean? It made me realize that the oil deposits in the ocean must be just gigantic. Because if you are willing as a company to spend that much money to build a city on the water, there must be so much oil down there.
I mean, if you find a good one, it's a geological feature, basically. Like, it takes years to get the drain. I mean, that's why they build full, what we think of as permanent piping systems to get it out there.
Like, I thought this was going to be like Resident Evil, basically, where the environment is about the size of a mansion or something like that. This is literally, like you said, a small city. And the first time you walk out of the chambers, like the housing chambers, and look at the rig, it's like mind-blowing. It really is. And again, this was the first game I played on my new PC. And I started playing it, I'm like, oh, this stinks. I'm like, I'm always going to remember this is the game I played first. And this moment here. When I walked out and saw it, I was like, oh, okay. Like, holy crap, man. These things are gigantic. They're literally like little cities, and they have like their own like sections and districts and things like that. And you learn them very quickly playing this game. So anyway, you go up and you meet with your boss, and your boss fires you, which you realize immediately like is ending your life, because you just read the letter where your wife is like, if you don't work out on this oil rig, I'm leaving you and I'm taking the kids with me. So you realize your whole life has basically just come to an end. And he's like, there's a chopper waiting for you on the helipad. Go get in the chopper and get out of here.
There's a chopper waiting for you, motherfucker.
Yeah, my karate chop. And so you go up to the helipad, and I knew it was coming, obviously, because this is a horror adventure or whatever. But, like, the minute that you step foot onto the helipad, like, all hell breaks loose. Like, some explosion happens, and the helicopter, like, goes wayward and falls off the side of the oil rig. You try to rescue somebody. You fall off the oil rig and land in the water. And, dude, the other thing that blew my mind is how tall these things are. Like, how do they build these things? It's really mind-blowing.
You're basically sinking stuff as far as it's a process.
It's crazy.
Look it up on YouTube. There's a bunch of videos.
I will now.
How to do that.
It piqued my interest in the whole thing. I'm gonna look that stuff up.
Like how you build a bridge.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy too.
Sinking
honestly.
concrete. There's a lot of people entombed in the concrete that forms the foundation of the Bay Bridge in the Bay Area.
Dams too. There's a lot of human beings that die building dams. But in this,
I hope at the end of all this, after you do everything and save everything, the guy's like, "You're still fired."
Yeah, you still lost your job. I'm not gonna say.
Good job saving everybody, but.
I won't say what happens to the boss. But, so anyway, you get fired, you go up to the helipad, all hell breaks loose, you fall off the oil rig, which normally kills people.
Yeah,
because it's literally like you're falling off a skyscraper.
Yeah, the water's concrete.
Yeah, at that point. You reach terminal velocity, basically. And so you hit the water, but you survive, and you wake up, and people are like, oh my god, I can't believe you lived. You fell all the way off the top of the helipad, blah, blah, blah. And then the adventure starts. Things are different now. Like, the rig has kind of fallen half apart. A lot of the workers either fell into the water or they're injured. Pathways are cut off, so you can't get back to, like, the housing quarters, to the part where you need to get to, like, meet up with everybody and figure out what's going on. And it turns into this, basically, you struggling for survival with the other people on the rig. And then things get crazy. You start going through the bowels of the rig, and you come across a creature. And I don't know if I want to spoil it or not. I'm just going to say this game, in general, reminds me a lot of The Thing. The film, not the game. And they're reviving the game, by the way. Did you see that? Well, this is very similar. There's a creature on the rig, and it likes to take over members of the crew. And the first part of the game is like a puzzle platformer. It's like you crawl, and it just does get a little bit annoying. You spend a lot of time in the dark with a flashlight in this. I'm reaching the point, Matt, in my game-playing life where I really don't like games like that, where you're always in the dark and using a little dinky flashlight to make your way around. The first, 45 minutes after you get through this section of the game with the boss and everything is all that. You're just crawling through these, corridors that are filled with water, and it's just a bunch of electrical equipment and conduit and rebar. And it's just basically a puzzle platformer. You're like, oh, I go over here, I flip this switch, and I go back over here. Now this door is open. Now I go through. There's also some first-person platforming as far as walking on beams, balancing yourself. Sometimes the walkways will have broken. You have to jump, and then there's holding mechanics. So you jump, and you have to make sure you hit a button at the right time to grab onto stuff, and you can pull yourself up. There's a lot of walking along ledges and trying not to fall off. And you go through that. That's the first half of the game. And then you meet the creature. And that's when the game completely flips on its head. And then it becomes a stealth game where you're using things to distract the monster to get it to go over there so that you can run through this pathway. The monster also reminds me a little bit of the Striders from Half-Life. And it does get to this point where the monster is out in the open air on the rig, and because it gets so big, basically, and it becomes this obstacle to get to the different parts of the rig that you need to get to, basically, to solve the riddles and ultimately get out of there. The game is only 3.5 hours long.
Wow.
And it's $35. You can get it on Steam right now for, I think it's 15% off for $31 or something like that. But here's the thing, it's on PC Game Pass. And that's how I played it.
Yeah, that would be preferable.
Just spend the $60. If you're interested in this, just actually $16 for this game. I don't know if I'd be willing to pay $16 for it, honestly. But I doubt anybody would get Game Pass just to play this. No. At least I don't think so. You shouldn't. But there's other good stuff on there that you should play as well. And then these are flashbacks that you have. Where you're flashing back to your life before you got on the oil rig. And this is how you start piecing together what you did. There are certain moments where you get hit in the head or you fall down. And these kind of moments will start happening where it flashes back to you and your wife arguing. Basically, that's how they tell you what you ultimately did to end up on the oil rig. And so there's clever parts to it. Games like this, to me, it's hard for me to ever rationalize spending more than $15 or $20 on them. At this length, at 3.5 hours, with this limited interaction, the other thing that they do in this game, Matt,
unless this is what you like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically the modern version of adventure games.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not as much puzzle in this as I thought there might be. In the early going, there's a little bit, you start interacting with this guy, he's like, hey, go flip the switch. And
yeah, but that's not what anybody misses about the old point-and-click adventures.
No.
The weird, nonsense logic, the moon logic, as they say, is not what people miss. The atmosphere and the stories and the character, and that's more or less what these kind of walking simulator things recreate.
Yeah,
I mean, that's if you had a 3D perspective on a lot of those old point-and-click games, that's basically what they'd be.
Yeah, I mean, some walking simulators are really just walking simulators, Matt, where you literally just walk through an environment and stuff happens.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's an element of that in this.
Firewatch is that, I would say, more or less, but something like Chinese Room doesn't really make stuff that you have to do things.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, there's no combat in this. Like, you're distracting the monster.
What was Dear Esther?
It was a walking simulator.
But what was it?
Isn't it the one where you're in the mansion and you're trying to figure out like what you go back and it's your aunt's old house or something? Isn't that how?
No, that's what Edith Finch.
Is that Edith Finch? I confuse those games all the time.
The weird like Winchester Mystery House thing is like Edith Finch, and you find out how all the different ancestors died.
What's the one where you're going back to like the relative's house though? He summoned you there, and you get there and you figure out that he's died. I think that's Dear Esther.
Is it?
I think so. Because I think he sends the letter. You play as Esther, and I think he sends the letter to you, Dear Esther.
Maybe.
Anyway,
I don't remember what happened in that one.
Well, one thing I'll say, Matt, is that these games do tend to bleed together for me. It's hard for me to like. This one's more distinctive because of its setting, for sure. But a lot of those games, it's like, okay, I'm walking through the British countryside. Okay, now I'm walking through the Swedish countryside. There's not a lot of delineation. This does have some more active parts, like you'll see here, like you're jumping. This is what has appeared after the explosion. And everybody on the rig is like, oh, the drill hit something big, and that's why it happened. And you come and you discover this thing, you're like, oh no, man. It's not just a bunch of oil that the drill hit. It hit something crazy. But again, there are some more active elements in this. You need to run and jump, and they intentionally make the running really slow in this, which for the monster chase sequences, I get it. It's to ratchet up the tension. But when you're trying to do some of the first-person platforming where you're jumping from one to another and then trying to grab onto something, you find yourself like clicking the stick to run, and you don't think you're running because you're moving so slow, so you click it again, and then you realize that you were, in fact, running, and then you're not going fast enough to be able to make the jump. You understand what I'm getting at? Mm-hmm. So, and then like here, there's a beam that you have to walk across. There's a bunch of ledges that you're walking across all the time, fear of falling. But again, this is like the early part of the game. Once you get past the first 45 minutes or an hour, you don't really deal with this stuff much anymore. It's more about like manipulating the monster's location so you can get around it to accomplish your goals and ultimately get off of the oil rig with as many people alive as possible. And the other criticism I would probably have is that all the characters in this look the same. They all are like just oil rig workers. They have the yellow like work helmet on and a mustache. It's hard to remember a lot of the characters. So when they die later on, like you don't have this attachment to them, and I didn't care that much. Like it's horrible. Some of the best scenes in the game are when they get snatched up, but I just didn't feel an emotional attachment to a lot of the characters. The other thing too is that when you start the game and you're going through the housing chambers, a lot of the people in there are kind of jerks. Like you don't really build an affinity with them. So later on, when they're like, "Hey, I'm the guy who was in the cafeteria. Now I'm gonna die." Like you don't really care. Like, okay, cafeteria guy, I don't remember you at all. Which table were you sitting at? And that's important in games like this, is building that caring for the other characters in the game, because that's all these games have, is the emotional attachment to the characters. So, I don't know. This definitely didn't push my rig. I'll put it to you that way. I was able to run this blasting on ultra everything with no problems. It's not really going to tax your rig all that much, but this will be the game that I'll always remember is the game that I played before when I got my brand new rig built. And that's probably not the game that I wanted to play first on my new PC, but it is what it is. But again, this game is $35. It lasts around 3 hours. I cannot, in good conscience, recommend that you buy this game for that amount. And in fact, the $15 or $16 for PC Game Pass for the month to play this is pushing the envelope of what I would be willing to pay for this game if I was paying for it outright. But it is, look, if you want to feel like you've accomplished something, you can finish this game in one sitting, no problem. There's a couple areas where, as I mentioned earlier, you're in the dark and you're using this little dinky, weak flashlight to see, like you're seeing right now in the B-roll, where it does start to get annoying because you can't see more than like 5 or 10 feet away. So you're just kind of like fumbling around in the dark all the time. And the game keeps playing like the sound of the creature to try to make you scared and keep you on edge or whatever. I hate sections of games like this where you're just constantly in the dark. It's just, I think as I've gotten older, my tolerance for it has just basically gone to zero. So, and let me just jump forward to the B-roll here a little bit so you can get a glimpse of the monster, even though it is a little bit of a spoiler. But they look very much like the Striders from Half-Life. They have a pod that's really high up off the ground, and they have these long, very slender legs that come to a point. I do feel like a lot of this game is a little bit derivative. Like, I feel like there's your first glimpse of the monster. I feel like it's taken little parts of different sci-fi movies and different video games to make this game. And it does feel like it lacks originality in a lot of ways. In the gameplay, there's nothing original about it at all. As you saw right there, throw the cup. That'll make it go to the cup. Then you run the other direction, that it didn't go. It's mechanics that we've messed around with for forever. Let's see. Again, I want you guys to be able to see. Here he comes. There's the monster. And I'll say this, like, the monster's animation as it strides across the rig is pretty freaking cool. Like, the way that its legs work. There you can see it a little bit better. But anyway, that's what you end up being in fear of. And it takes a while, like any good horror game. They take a good hour before they show you the monster. There's the big reveal finally where you're like, oh my god. And there's construction worker 55C that I did not care that died. So anyway, that's called Still Wakes the Deep. It's only available for PC and Xbox Series right now. My guess is it'll eventually come to PlayStation. And I think that could probably run on Switch as well. So I think we'll probably end up seeing that game on new platforms. But right now, only for PC and for Xbox, $35. Do not buy it at that price. Although I could understand if you want to get Game Pass for a month, if that's one of the games that you want to play. Again, you can get through it in about 3.5 hours, so not a big time commitment. Any questions about the game, Matt?
Not really.
No?
Seems pretty straightforward.
It is, yeah. So anyway, there you go.
I'm surprised that I didn't I've seen stuff for this game pop up, but I haven't seen it be connected with the Chinese room much. I'm a little surprised they haven't.
Yeah, they haven't marketed that like you might think, actually. That's a good point. Like, I don't think a lot of people even realize that this is their new game. And they're kind of a heralded developer.
I've seen it on like the store pages and stuff, but I didn't remember until you said that it was them making it. I forgot about that.
Yeah. A lot of other people have liked the game more. I'll just let you know. Other editors have liked the game more than I. I think I'm down on it a little bit more than the other reviews that I've seen, and we've curated some reviews to SIFTD that you can read. So if you want an alternate perspective from myself, we always like to provide that for you guys, and you can get that at SIFTD.net. So there you go. That is Still Wakes the Deep. And unfortunately, because our stream went down, we have no internet, we cannot play Name That Game. It'll be back next week, though, so count on that. But before we go, I just want to remind you guys that we are sponsored 100% by Patreon at patreon.com/SIFTD. Again, for just $4 a month.
It does seem to be on PS5.
Really?
It's got a Metacritic rating.
Interesting.
Lower than the others.
Well, then our database is wrong.
Yeah, it's got a 74 Metascore on PS5, 86 on Xbox, and 76 on PC.
That's really odd that there would be such a discrepancy between all those.
The PS5 is the most reviews.
Well, our database does not have the PlayStation 5 version, so that's a problem with our website that we'll have to correct. And we only have it for PC and Xbox on our website, so I'll fix that.
Most of the blurbs seem to be in line with what you're saying.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not that far out of the realm of reason then on that one. So, okay, I'll make that adjustment to our database. Thank you. But anyway, we are supported at patreon.com/SIFTD. That's SIFTD. If you've been listening to our show for years on a podcast service and you're finally ready to get off the sideline and support us, please do it there. That's the best way to support us because we can count on that money a little bit more and help us plan out future content and other things like that, and additions and changes and improvements to the website as well, which we're going to be doing here very soon. In fact, we're replatforming the website here in like the next week. Just be a little nervous, but it needs to be done. We've been having some technical issues with the website now for the last couple months. Honestly, ever since that hack happened. I don't think it's related. I think it just worked out that way, that like the website is having, I think there's like a memory leak or something in the code.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 10-year-old website.
It is at this point, which is hard to believe, Matt. It's really mind-blowing. So anyway, we're replatforming here in the next few days. This weekend, we're going to have an outage. I'll let you know. Just follow us on Twitter, and we'll let you know exactly when that's going to happen. The site will be down for a few hours over this weekend as we do that. But anyway, because of your support, that's how that happens. So head to patreon.com/SIFTD and help us out. If you don't have any money, as I've mentioned many times, you can help us out with Twitch Prime. If you're watching on YouTube, go down below, learn how to do it. Takes 5 minutes to hook it up the first time. After that, it literally takes 3 seconds. You do need to re-up it every month. It's not that big of a deal. It's like 2 clicks to re-up every month. So if you've already connected your accounts, please go and do it. We rely on that money, and we need it. And if you don't have Amazon Prime and you don't have any money, and you still love video games enough to watch our show, that is awesome. You can still help us just by reviewing the show on any of the podcast services that you listen to it on. You can like the show. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. All that YouTube stuff helps. It matters. Just take a second and just say, awesome podcast. That's all you got to do. And it all feeds into the algorithm and gets us new viewers and hopefully people that are willing to help us out at our Patreon. We'd really appreciate it. Matt, thanks a million for having us in here to do the show today. Hopefully I don't totally bomb the end of the show. And like I said, unfortunately, our stream did go down today, so we weren't able to do Name That Game, but we'll be back next week. So sorry for the inconvenience, but I think now the archive is going to have a little bit more weight for a lot of you guys to watch the end of the show, which is a rarity. And we'll see you back here next Tuesday at twitch.tv/SIFTD Games. So have yourselves an awesome week full of awesome games. We'll see you then. GameFace is up and out.